When I was 9, I was staying home alone. It was early morning, and I had just gotten out of the shower and brushed my teeth. I put on my favorite outfit, set up a little area in the living room with a drink and a snack, and then turned on the TV to watch something. The phone rang. I went across the house to go answer it. The voice on the other end was, really familiar and really comforting for me. He asked me about my day so far, and he made small talk. After about a minute or so, he then said,
"I like your outfit. Is pink your favorite color?"
I replied back with, "Oh, thank you. No, it isn't."
"What were you planning on watching on TV?"
he asked. It took me a few seconds to understand what was happening, as I was only 9 years old and very naive. The voice on the other end of the phone then changed. It became deep and raspy and horrific. The voice then proceeded to describe all these horrible things that they wanted to do to me, and in detail. I went numb. My skin felt as if it were on fire, and my heart was racing. I had never been more terrified in my entire life. I slammed down the phone, and then I called my mom at work. I tried to explain what happened, and I'm not sure I was making much sense. She got on to me for answering the phone, and she told me to go back about my day. I remember trying to explain to her that he was watching me, and that he told me what I had been doing, and that he knew what I was wearing. I also mentioned that I was going to call 911 because I needed help. "That isn't necessary. I'm not coming home. Just don't answer the phone and go watch TV," she said, and then I hung up. I was really confused and I was scared. I could feel his eyes on me. I pulled the curtains closed and I raced around the house, torn between doing what I felt was right and doing what I had been told by my mother. This whole time the phone was ringing. The second it would stop, it would just start up yet again. The sound of the phone ringing would pulse through my entire body like electricity. It was practically paralyzing me. It was like I was frozen but also on fire at the same time. I waited for a pause in the ringing and called 911. "I'm home by myself and I'm 9 years old and someone's watching me and telling me they're going to kill me," I told the operator. She tried to keep me calm and she said that she would send help for me. I remember standing there listening to this kind voice just trying to help me, but I could feel every scary movie scenario just playing out behind me. Was he creeping up behind me with a knife? Was he going to shoot me through a window? Was he going to throw a rock through the glass and open the door? I just didn't know. I couldn't breathe and I couldn't feel my body. In a moment of panic, I set off the alarm to the house and ran outside. I remember this sense of relief, but also this overwhelming feeling of having a separation in my reality. The house felt small and dark and really dangerous and cold. Outside felt open, as well as safe and warm. I could hear lawnmowers and the sounds of birds chirping. It was a beautiful break from that bone-chilling feeling of the phone. It was like I was watching a movie and I could see myself experience both of these environments at the same time. A neighbor was pushing his child in a swing. He was concerned. He let me stand next to him and he protected me. I could hear the sirens now, the blaring sound getting louder as they grew closer. It felt like it took an eternity, but the police finally arrived. An officer walked over to me and he asked me what happened. I did my best to explain it, but so many of the words on the phone that were used were just so embarrassing. I couldn't bring myself to use such adult words to a police officer. And his other words were just bone-chilling. I couldn't say those either. To this day, I can still hear my young voice repeating the words. He was watching me. He said he was going to kill me. Not long after, my mom's car pulled into the driveway. She, for some reason, decided to come home. She didn't look for me or come to speak to me. She just calmly got out and then walked over to the police officer. I was standing in the doorway from the house to the garage, just facing the driveway. I could see my mom and the police officer. I was watching and trying to understand, trying to figure out what was happening. Then I saw it. She was laughing. My face was swollen from tears, my heart still racing, and my skin was on fire, and my mom was laughing? What the hell was going on? Very slowly, I crept a little closer, and I then overheard. "I'm so sorry about this. I guess she just got scared being home alone and overreacted. I'm really sorry. What the hell's happening? What did I do wrong? Did I imagine this? Was this a dream? Should I not have called 911? Did I actually overreact?" My memory of what happened after that is a little hazy. I remember refusing to stay home alone and the sound of the phone ringing just rippling through my body. It wasn't something I liked discussing. I refused to repeat what had been said to me by the voice on the phone. My mom decided that she knew who did it, but she didn't even know the details. There was no investigation. No one was questioned. She told me it was a boy who was the same age as me who lived across the street. I knew that was impossible, but no matter how much I protested it, I was always told that it was him. Many years later, after I was an adult with my own children, we were at Christmas. Everyone was in the living room and I had gone into the back bedroom to change a diaper. As I was walking out of the room and back into the living room, I could hear my mom laughing, her voice as if she had been telling a joke. The faces of everyone else in the room told a different story. Discomfort, anguish, shock, fear, yet she was still laughing. It felt as if I was walking in slow motion. One of my older children had actually stopped me from entering the living room and sort of pushed me back into the room that I had just come out of. She just told the story of you being home alone and the man threatening to kill you. She told it like it was a joke or something, like some funny story from your childhood. My child told me. To this day, I never learned who it was that called me. I deal with my fear of ringing phones and phone conversations on a daily basis. It's awful. So I'm 16 years old now and living in a duplex with my family, which consists of 3 younger brothers all under 5, my 18-year-old sister, and my mother and father. About 3 years ago when we lived in our old apartment, I was home alone for the entire day. This was pretty normal as my father worked in the summer. My mom would take the kids out to do things like swimming and other things like that. I usually just slept in and I had a small list of chores that I had to do during the day before everyone came home. One of those happened to be laundry. The way that the apartment is set up is on each level there's about 20 places where people live, and only one laundry room shared amongst us. I lived a few doors down from it, and I had to pass the door to the stairs in order to get to it, which that door had a little window. I was going to throw the clothes from the washer into the dryer when I then heard a clicking noise. I wasn't really sure what it was, but for a second I decided to listen before it then stopped. I was always really freaked out from that apartment, and this definitely wasn't helping. I finished throwing the laundry into the dryer and then started it. Then I started walking down the hall when I then heard that same clicking noise yet again. I froze. It sounded like it was coming from the stairwell. So as scared as I was, I looked out the window. And to my surprise, I didn't see anyone. Really relieved, I booked it down the hall to my apartment. I closed and locked the door, going about the day again. Or so I tried. When it's quiet in that apartment, you can really hear everything. Conversations, footsteps, laughing, everything, especially from the hallway, and that's where the most crap was heard. I was in the kitchen feeding my animals when I heard slow, heavy footsteps in the hall. It sounded like they were coming down the hall right outside of the apartment. I decided to run to the living room and mute the TV so that I could listen, when I then heard 3 loud bangs at my door. I was kind of crapping my pants at this point, not really knowing what to do. I kept the TV muted and slowly moved my way to the door, looking out the peephole. I was horrified at what I saw. It was a black figure standing with its back towards me. I didn't know what to do, and I was frozen in place. And then, I then heard a familiar sound. That same bizarre clicking sound that I heard before. I noped the hell out of there and grabbed my animals, then hid in my room. I mean, I was really scared, but I was starting to wonder if it was really nothing. I usually listen to scary stories just like these to scare the crap out of me, but maybe something was actually there. Later in the evening, when my sister arrived home, I told her about what I saw because she's really into supernatural things like that. When I told her what I saw, the color from her face ran away. She said something along the lines of seeing that same figure, but in dark rooms and hallways, not lit ones. The next time I encountered it, I was sleeping on the bottom bunk and my sister in the top. The clock read 3:37 a.m., the fan was going, and the nightlight was plugged in. My sister was sound asleep at this point. I heard the clicking again, but this time quieter and from under the bed. One of my cats on my bed didn't seem to notice it, so I figured maybe I was just imagining it. That was until I then noticed a long black, bony cold arm then reach out and start making its way right up to my bed. I then yelped, enough to wake up my sister but no one else. Pretty groggily, she just tells me to shut up and that she's trying to sleep. "But you gotta see this," I say as I look down and notice the thing's gone now. I didn't catch an ounce of sleep that night. I have lots of other terrifying stories from that hellhole apartment, but I think most of them revolve around that thing. Ever since I moved, I haven't had anything weird happen since. I'm just really glad that thing never followed me to my new house. Thank God for that. One night I was watching The Conjuring at home with my little sister when we heard someone putting a key in our front door, as well as opening it. We were sitting in the living room next to a sliding door that was also very close to the front door, so we both heard it very clearly. Now, this didn't really alarm us since we knew that our dad had recently gone out to get some things, so we kinda just assumed that maybe he had returned. "Dad, you're back already?" I casually asked. There was no response. Dad, are you there?" I asked yet again, thinking he hadn't heard me the first time. Once again, just silence. Right at this point, I'm starting to get the feeling that something isn't quite right, and I could tell by the look on my sister's face that she was just as nervous as I was. We started to look at each other for a brief moment, wondering what we should do, before we started hearing a few more scattering sounds from right outside the sliding door. By this stage, I was frozen in fear. I tried one more time in a louder but shakier voice. "Dad, is that you?" But the silence continued. Now at this point I'm freaking out and I literally jump right off the couch. My sister also abruptly gets up and starts rapidly walking to the other end of the room, which leads to the kitchen area. She later revealed to me that she was planning on grabbing a knife. She had this horrified look on her face that I hadn't ever seen before. We just looked at each other in nervous silence. I didn't really know what to do and I didn't want to make any further sounds. I finally decided to walk up to the sliding door and began opening it as slowly as possible, now peering into the darkness. When the door was finally open wide enough, I poked my head out and scanned the corridor, now preparing for the worst. To my surprise, there was no one there. But what was more strange was that the front door was still completely shut. My sister and I were obviously both extremely relieved, as we were almost certain that there was an intruder in our house. After this, I immediately went to go and ask my mom if it was her or whether she had noticed anything. She told me that she thought my dad had come home as well, and she also heard someone opening the front door. Around a half an hour later, which felt like an eternity at the time, as we were still quite shaken from the incident, my dad finally arrived home and he confirmed to us that he hadn't returned home earlier. To this day, my sister and I still have no idea what happened that night, and I guess we never will. Back in May of 2013, I'd moved out of my parents' house and into an apartment community. As I was moving in the very first day, I had heard some loud thumping from the apartment above me. I had hoped it was just a fluke and that the people above me just happened to be doing something loud at the time, but over the next few months, it just got worse. They would very frequently make really loud thumping noises and slam things down, sometimes even causing the room to vibrate a little. I really have no idea what they could have possibly been doing that would be so noisy. I would often hear them screaming and arguing with each other at all times during the day and night. It also wasn't uncommon for them to have a shouting match at 1 a.m. I reported them to the apartment manager, but she didn't seem to take my complaint very seriously, and then brushed me off, saying she'd look into it. I was already locked into my lease for at least a year, so she didn't have much incentive to do anything as long as nothing serious happened. She only cared about collecting rent, rather than providing a good community for the residents. I was completely ready to take matters into my own hands, and then confront them about their late-night fights. But then the situation took a really dark turn. Things went from annoying to creepy when one night the couple had started threatening each other. I heard the guy shout out, "You walk out that door and you'll never come back." And then the girl shouted back, "Get out of my way." That's when I then heard a loud thud and what sounded like glass breaking. Then I heard hurried footsteps walk out the building and the door to the outside open and slam shut. It was eerily quiet after that. Even though it was well past midnight, my curiosity really got the better of me, and I walked out my door and into the hallway. I climbed up the stairs to the apartment above me, and I saw the door still open. The guy noticed me looking in and then walked up to me. "Who the hell are you? What do you want?" he asked harshly. I heard some noise and yelling. "Everything all right?" I replied. "Yeah, everything's fine. Mind your own damn business." He then just slammed the door right in my face. I kinda just stood there for a few seconds, wondering if I should call the police or not. I decided not to because there really wasn't anything I could tell them, and I was kind of afraid of how this guy might react to his downstairs neighbor calling the police on him. I walked back down the stairs and into my apartment. Things were rather quiet from above over the next few days. I had hoped that his girlfriend had left her obviously unstable boyfriend for good, and that would be the end of it. Unfortunately, I just wasn't that lucky. A couple of nights later when I was sleeping, I had heard a noise coming from the outside hallway that woke me up. I heard some loud footsteps coming up the stairs. I got out of bed and walked over to my door and looked out the peephole. At first I saw nothing. Then I saw two men walk down the stairs and then stop to discuss something for a few minutes. I'd got a really uneasy feeling about them as it was late at night and I'd never seen them before. The door leading to the outside is permanently locked and can only be opened with a key, so either someone had let them in or they had a key. But who were they and why were they here? Then they walked out of the building. It was odd seeing this, but I didn't think much of it and just went back to bed, just really relieved that they were gone. But not 10 minutes later, I had heard those same footsteps yet again. I was still awake and I walked over to the peephole. Those same two men had returned. I saw the guy who lived above me walk down to greet them. I couldn't hear what they were talking about, but they had started to raise their voices with him. Then one of them grabbed the guy and then slammed him against the wall. It was right next to my apartment door, so I heard the loud thud of his body banging against my wall, and then him shouting, "Hey, let go of me!" I quickly got down and then backed away from my door, as I didn't want them to notice me looking through the peephole. My heart was beating in fear as I heard the guy scream in pain as one of the men punched him. Then one of them shouted, "If you ever come near my sister ever again, I'll cut your throat." The guy pleaded once again for them to let him go, but they slammed him against my wall yet again. I then heard them walk down the stairs and out of the building. I kinda just sat there crouched down for a few minutes, in total shock as to what had happened. I literally just witnessed my upstairs neighbor get assaulted and then have his life threatened by two thugs right outside my door. When I finally got back up, I looked out my peephole and nobody was there. I tried to go back to sleep, but I was too on edge. I just laid there in bed, afraid those guys might come back, and wondering once again if I should call the police. I decided not to call them since I really didn't want to get involved in a dispute between my upstairs neighbor and two dangerous men that had assaulted him and also threatened to kill him. Thankfully, he moved out shortly after that incident, and there wasn't any more trouble with those guys. I moved the hell out of there as soon as my lease expired, as I didn't feel safe living there after that night. And again, the apartment manager clearly didn't care about the community she was in charge of. I've since bought my own condo, and I'm forever grateful that I'll never have to deal with upstairs neighbors ever again. hearing someone get attacked right outside your apartment door and then have his life threatened right in front of you, well, that's something you just never forget. This happened when I was 13. I lived in a duplex with my dad and brother. It was a 2-bedroom and I shared a room with my dad while my older brother had his own room. It wasn't that uncommon for both of them to have plans at night while I stayed home to play video games, and alone. This night was no different. My dad was probably at some bar, and as for my brother, who really knows where he was? I was playing the original Resident Evil on PlayStation, and at around midnight, my eyelids were getting really heavy, and I decided to go to bed. I had slept with my bedroom door wide open. Now, not one time in the years that we lived in this place did my dad or brother ever come home by entering through the back sliding glass door. There were a couple of times where my brother didn't have his key for one reason or another, and he knocked on my bedroom window to ask me to let him in. My dad always had his key though, and he would always come through the front door. On this night in question, I had heard the back door slide open. It was an old door, and sliding it open wasn't really that easy. It was also very loud, so I heard it crystal clearly. I lay in bed absolutely wide-eyed, my imagination going crazy. I heard whoever it was walk through the dining room, then through the kitchen, and then into the living room. They had made no attempt to be quiet. After a brief silent pause, I saw someone walk by my bedroom doorway. This scared the living hell out of me, as you can imagine, and my heart throbbed. Whoever was in my house walked into the bathroom that was right next to my bedroom, then flipped the light on. The light poured into my bedroom and I was just laying there absolutely terrified, completely exposed by the light from the bathroom. You're probably wondering why I didn't shout for my brother or my dad. Well, because like I mentioned earlier, I knew it wasn't them and there was no one else that it could have been that would have made sense to me. Not a family member and definitely not a friend. I just knew that it was someone that didn't belong. The person then walked out of the bathroom, left the light on, then went into my brother's room and started making a ton of noise. It sounded like they were searching for something. All I did was lay there shivering. After a few more minutes, the person walked by my bedroom again. I expected at any moment that a stranger would then walk into my room, but they didn't. I heard them making noise in the living room, walking around huffing and puffing. Then they started walking back and forth right by my bedroom repeatedly, into the bathroom and then back out, over and over. At the time, I was 100% sure they were messing with me for some reason. They knew I was there, whoever they were. I heard the person making noises. By this and by the really huge figure that I saw walking back and forth, I knew it was a man. They continued walking around each room except for the one I was in, and then suddenly I heard them walk back through the house to the back sliding door, open it, and then leave. I lay there in bed terrified, just wondering what the hell just happened. After a while, out of sheer exhaustion, I fell asleep. In the morning, I found that my dad and brother were home. I have asked the both of them dozens of times, but they both promised me that it wasn't them. Plus again, why the hell would they go through the back door then leave again through the back door? This was about 21 years ago. I'll never know who it was or why they were there. Nothing was missing either. What really makes me wonder to this day is why the hell they never came into my bedroom. I mean, the door was wide open and they walked by it at least 20 times. It just doesn't make sense. I was about 21 or 22 years old at the time and living by myself. I had left my window open on a really pleasant night. It was low enough to the ground that you could get in if you really tried, but the screen wasn't easy to take off. And I did live in a fairly safe neighborhood, so I didn't even think twice about it. I woke up in the middle of the night to the smell of smoke, and I reached out to turn on my lamp, and my hand then hit what was very obviously a person. My brain fully woke up at that point, and I realized there was a shirtless man right in my bedroom smoking a cigarette and staring at me. I remember yelling for him to get out of my room, and I must have spooked him just as badly as he spooked me, because he leapt out of my window and took off after that. I slammed it shut, then moved a bookcase in front of it, and when I went out the next morning in the daylight, I found the screen sitting against the house. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night, and I haven't slept with the window more than having it cracked ever since. I also absolutely refuse to live on the ground floor of a building. I don't know if he was planning to rob me or what, but it was absolutely terrifying, and it really makes me wonder how many times it happened and I didn't wake up. It was scary. This happened a few years ago. My parents were both working out of the city. My siblings weren't home because they had to go to school that day, so I was left home alone. I was playing some games on the main PC in the house that's right in the living room. My parents never allowed me to have electronic devices in my room. They trusted me to stay home alone with all the rules of not picking up the phone or opening the door when someone knocks or when someone rings the doorbell. While I was playing games, I had heard the sound of my front door then opening. I was confused because my parents weren't to be home anytime soon. I checked the door and it was wide open, but there wasn't anyone there. I yelled for my mom and dad, but no answer. I texted the both of them, but they said they were still at work. I got a bit creeped out, but I thought they forgot to lock the door and maybe the wind opened it or something. I just decided to go back to the computer that I was playing games on, that is, until I heard a noise coming from my room. I got really frightened, but my stupid young self just decided to check it out to see what the noise was. I checked the bathroom first, but I then heard a zipper opening and closing. I didn't have a closet at the time since mine had recently had to go because there was mold behind it. I looked into my room, but everything seemed fine. I got a little closer to my temporary closet and opened it a bit. Once I opened the closet, my heart started pounding. There was a man holding a knife in my closet. I ran to my living room, shut my bedroom door, and took the house phone. I ran outside with the keys to lock the person in the house. I called the police and they were able to arrive shortly after. They looked through the house and they found the person trying to look for me all over the house. Since there was no way that he could have gotten out, he got arrested. I still get nightmares about this traumatic moment. What if I didn't hear them and I just went to sleep that night? Would I be dead? Who knows, but the thought of that absolutely terrifies me to this day. Several years ago, when I was 25 years old, I lived with at the time one of my best friends. Our friendship eventually started to dwindle, so she was rarely home. This night, however, she ended up staying at our place and then heading to bed pretty early. I was a server at the time, so I stayed up pretty late, usually watching YouTube and smoking pot. This night was no different than any other, except for the fact that my neighbors actually tried to kidnap me. I'll go ahead and give you some background information on my house and my neighbors. We lived in a 3-bedroom house with 2 bedrooms and the kitchen facing the crazy neighbors. They were a younger couple living in a smaller mill house. They were constantly coming to our door asking for handouts. Now, normally I'd be really happy to help a neighbor out, but they would come over and ask for crazy things like for us to fill up an old Mountain Dew bottle with water because theirs had shut off or something, as well as for beer, and they once literally asked us for $1. They would consistently be knocking at our door to ask for help, and whenever we wouldn't answer, I would peek through the window to either see them jacking cigarette butts from the ashtray or pressing their eyeballs against the door peephole to see if they could spot us. It was really strange. Anyway, there I was smoking some weed and watching some YouTube on my couch when I then heard a knock at the door. I rolled my eyes because I knew exactly who had came knocking. It was 11 p.m. and I checked the peephole. And sure enough, it was the boyfriend right on my porch. Normally I'd just walk away and continue with my life, but he looked like he was in distress this night. So I opened the door to see what was up.
Hey, I just wanted to come over and see if you would film my engagement. I got my girlfriend a ring here in my pocket. and I need you to follow me to my backyard and film it for me.
Baffled but really curious, I told him congrats and said that I'd be out in just a second and just needed to put my shoes on. I shut the door behind me, then locked it. Quickly, I ran into the back room that looked out into their backyard. I started peeking through the blinds to see the setup. Nothing. It was pitch black darkness. There was absolutely no sign of decorations or anything like that. Now naturally, I woke up my roommate to tell her what was going on. Yeah, screw that," she said to me, and we both walked back up to the door after the boyfriend started banging on the door. I looked through the peephole again. I couldn't really see anything, and I was really confused. That is, until I saw him pull his eyeball away from the peephole. I quickly turned around and then put my back right up against the door. My roommate came running back to the door from her room holding 2 wire hangers for protection. We both just clung onto the hangers and sat up against the door until he finally left. We were so freaked out, but we wanted to make sure that we weren't overreacting. We decided to go out our back door and hopped into her car so we could do a drive-by. They always had their front door open, and they also didn't have any blinds, so it was really easy to see in their house. Very slowly, we crept by in her car and peered into the living room. Sitting on the couch and all staring at the wall was there the couple and the older man. We sped off and we ended up staying at a friend's house that night. I never answered the door for either of them ever again. One day I came home from work and there was an older lady that was parked in their driveway. She walked up to me as I got out of my car and asked if I knew where the neighbors were. I told her that I hadn't seen them in quite a while, and she informed me that she was the owner of the house. She told me that they were months late on rent and it finally came to evict them. She entered the home to find it completely trashed, needles and garbage all over the place, holes in the wall, and literally shit on the floor. I told her I was really sorry to hear that she had to deal with all that, but that I was happy they were finally gone. I'm really not 100% sure what was going on that night, but I'm really glad that I didn't follow him to the backyard. Who the hell knows what they actually had planned? I want to start off by saying that I've never told this story to anyone. I'm a 32-year-old female, and my name is Kara. It all started about 2 weeks ago when I moved into my new apartment. I was all moved in and everything because I live alone, so I didn't really have much stuff to unpack. Later that day, I grabbed my purse and keys to go to work for the day. I was walking to my car when I saw someone start to approach me. It was a woman who looked to be at least 45 to 55 years old. It was very obvious that she was a smoker. She also looked really sleep-deprived, skinny, and frail, and she had very noticeable eye bags that seemed to get worse the more I looked at them. "Hello, miss. You must be the new neighbor," said the old woman with an extremely damaged voice caused by years of smoking. "Yeah, I just moved here 3 days ago." I responded as polite as possible, then I noticed she had something in her hands that she hid behind her. She looked really excited to show me what it was. Then she noticed that I saw it, and that seemed to make her even more excited, and she had a huge smile on her face. It was horrible. Her teeth were uneven and rotting, she was missing teeth, and her gums looked like they had been bleeding earlier in the day. Her lips were also blistered and dry, and she scared the absolute crap out of me. "I want you to meet someone," she said to me. She then showed me what she was hiding behind her. Her name is Jambalaya. It was a very strange looking doll that kind of resembled a coconut. Thank you. Nice to meet her," I said. I just told her what she probably wanted to hear to avoid any drama. I also had to wrap things up soon before I was late for work. "Sorry, but I have to get to work. I'll see you later, ma'am," I said in an apologetic tone. "No need to be formal with me. You can call me Emma," she said right before I could get in my car. I nodded in response, got in my car, turned it on, and then pulled out of the parking lot. I looked in my rearview mirror for like a split second, and I saw that that woman was dead staring at me while rocking that really weird doll. I concluded that she was probably under the influence, judging by her attitude and the look of her. After work, I was driving home around 5:05, and I pulled into the parking lot. When I drove in, I saw Emma in the parking lot just sitting in the middle of the road playing with Jambalaya. What the hell is she doing? I mumbled to myself in complete shock as I drove past her. She saw me in my car and she gave me a sinister, rotten smile. I smiled back, just trying my best to keep my composure. I parked and stepped out of my car. "Please don't come over here. Please don't come over here," I repeated in my mind as I walked to the entrance. I avoided eye contact as best as I could, but I ended up looking at her because I heard her saying no and singing something. So I just kept walking, but I also kept looking at her. "Jambalaya, jambalaya, jambalaya," she sang in a low, creepy voice. She was singing it really slow and just kept repeating the doll's name. I walked a little faster, and right before I walked in, I looked back to see if she was still singing, but she wasn't. She was stood up holding that doll in one hand, and the other was on her heart. She was visibly upset for some reason. We were just standing there staring at each other for what felt like hours. Then I broke my trance and mouthed an apology, and then walked in my apartment, not looking back this time. As soon as I walked into my apartment, I locked my door. Emma really freaked me out, and I didn't want to be around her anymore. I mean, she isn't hostile or anything, but she really gives me the creeps. I put down my stuff and walked to my room, turned on the lights, flopped on my bed, and then sighed. I then got back up and I started cleaning up my mess. I walked to the window, slightly scared of what I might see. Nobody. I was really relieved. Part of me was expecting Emma to be looking at me from my window. I woke up at a really uncertain time and looked over to my bedside table to pick up my phone, then realizing that it was 4:30 in the morning. I tried to figure out why I woke up and turned the bedside light on because I was wide awake for some reason. It was kind of unnerving because I didn't understand what was happening. As I was laying there in my bed, I started hearing really weird tapping noises and then froze. Being the person that always listens to scary stories and has become a little paranoid, I started to freak out. I didn't really know if I should get up and go see what was happening or just stay in my bed and wait for it to pass. The tapping had stopped after about a minute, and I had just heard shuffles and something like a whisper. At this point, I was definitely freaking out, but I really didn't know what I should do. All of a sudden, everything went quiet for about 5 minutes. I was still too scared to get up when all of a sudden my front door slammed super loud. This freaked me out so badly that I got up from my bed super fast, looking in every room trying to figure out what the hell just happened. I didn't see anything, so I was starting to freak out even more now, thinking I was going crazy. The last place I checked was the bathroom, and I looked in the shower to see if somebody was hiding in there. To my surprise, there was something in there, but it wasn't a human, and right after I saw it, that was when I realized who had been in my apartment. It was the doll. I have no idea why she wanted to break into my apartment just to leave this stupid doll in my bathtub. It makes absolutely no sense, and I still have no idea why she did it. After this event, I realized just how crazy this woman really was and how dangerous she could be. How was she able to break into my apartment, and how long was she in there, and what exactly was she doing other than leaving a doll in my bathtub? Later that morning, I looked around the whole apartment trying to figure out just how she broke in. After about 10 minutes of searching the apartment and checking every door and window, I noticed that my bathroom window was unlocked and even still opened ajar. This freaks me out so much, and I instantly become mad at myself for forgetting something as important as locking all your doors and windows. I knew right away this is how she managed to break in, and she must have just went out the front door because it was easier. I went to the apartment manager and staff and explained everything that had been going on, and how I would possibly be moving out soon due to this crazy-ass person I was living next to. Thankfully, they really understood my situation, and they said they would be talking to Emma about what had happened. They offered me next month's rent for free if I stayed. I decided to accept this offer since I had just recently moved in, and I didn't really have a lot of money on me at the time. Around a week later, after nothing else had happened, I heard from the apartment staff that Emma was getting arrested and possibly getting sent to a psych ward. They explained to me that after the manager had tried to talk to her about what was going on, she had confessed to breaking into my apartment, to which she then became furious and denied the whole thing. She had a mental freak out and was taking it out on the manager just because he tried to talk to her about her actions. This led to her getting aggressive and being arrested. I have to say, I was pretty damn happy about the news of her being arrested because that meant that I didn't have to worry about her anymore, and it gave me a lot of hope for my new apartment. I threw that doll away and decided to move on with my life that year after experiencing all that hell. I never want to go through something like that again. So I'm in my early 20s and female. I moved out on my own for the first time about 2 years ago. I haven't really had much to do with any of my neighbors, and I've always been slightly uneasy due to the fact that no one around here is looking out for me. If anything seems off, literally no one would even notice or do any investigating to make sure I'm okay. Last year I noticed a man that was constantly walking his dog in the grass area behind my home. This isn't unusual to see, it's a pretty common area for my residents here. His dog is super cute and my cat liked to play with it through the glass door out back. They would chase each other back and forth and put their paws up on the glass and such. You know, real cute stuff. Well, one day I was outside and his dog came running up to the porch with glee and to get pets and say hi to his kitty friend, my cat. Now, this is the first time that I actually spoke to this neighbor. We'll call him Mark. So Mark seemed decent enough and we got along just fine. We started hanging out pretty often in a short time period because I'm a smoker and he was letting his dog out all the time, and it was also summer, so we would always run into each other quite often. Most days we would spend an hour or more after work just talking. This lasted for a couple of weeks. I gave him my phone number and I was just really happy to have a friend in my complex now. I will say, however, he was clearly very interested in either having a romantic relationship with me or friends with benefits. I was very honest with him that I really wasn't interested in either of those at all, and I actually had to tell him this quite often. Frankly, I was getting rather irritated that this always came up several times every time we spoke. He rather quickly was really trying to get me in his house, from the first time we talked until the last. He always offered multiple times every time I saw him. I always said no and blamed it on me being COVID cautious. Well, he quickly got tired of that excuse and he invited himself into my home as well. But of course, I always said no. One day he came out while I was smoking with a bottle of wine and a couple of glasses, saying that I had to try it because it was really delicious. I happened to instantly notice that the seal on the bottle was broken, but it also didn't seem like anything was drank. The bottle was filled to the brim. So he pours a couple of glasses and doesn't drop a beat in telling me,
"Go ahead, take a drink."
I felt very uncomfortable, but I didn't want him to feel like he was being accused of anything when he was just trying to be a really nice neighbor. After all, he poured himself a glass of this very same stuff, right? I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Well, my mama still raised me better than that. So I totally faked a sip and said it was good. After any sentence that either of us had, he would tell me again to take another drink. I told him that I don't really drink though, so I'm pacing myself. But I did say that I noticed he hadn't drank any and to just please go ahead. He didn't reach for his glass right away, but in the middle of speaking, he reached for his cup and then knocked it over, spilling the wine all in the grass. He brushed it off rather quickly and he told me it was my turn to drink now. That's when I then said, "But you still haven't even drank anything. You spilled your drink. Pour yourself another glass. I don't want to drink this alone." So he did. He still didn't drink anything. He did tell me a few moments later though to drink mine. I told him that he needs to catch up and we basically just kept doing that same old thing in circles. He reached for his glass again and guess what? Spilled it yet again. Wine is all in the grass once more. Then what do you know? He told me to drink. At this point I'm done. There's too many red flags that are screaming at me to get the hell out. I'm honest with him that this seemed really sketchy and I didn't trust the drink because he's refusing to drink any of it, but is so damn eager for me to drink mine. He told me that he was just clumsy and taking it slow because he doesn't drink a lot, but that he's seen me having friends over taking shots and drinking beers and wine, so he knows that I can handle it better than him. Yet another big red flag is raised. So he's been watching me now? What? I think it's important to mention that our complex is huge, and he doesn't live particularly near me. He's about a half a block away from me, and he can't see my windows or yard from where he lives. So I told him flat out that I'm not drinking anything anymore because of how this all seemed. He then once again pours himself a glass and once again spills it. There isn't much left in the bottle at this point. I pour the remaining wine in his glass and I tell him to drink it with me on 3. We raise our glasses, and in my amazement, he actually takes a drink. And I then spilled mine into the grass. Oh well. He then comes out about 2 nights later while I was smoking and instantly starts complaining to me that I wouldn't date him or have sex with him, and that he just really doesn't know why all girls are like this. He starts getting really loud and shouting at me, asking me what the problem with him is, and why I won't do these things. I told him that I had been honest with him since I had met him, that I'm not interested in that, and that it isn't him specifically. I'm just honestly not interested in that from anyone right now. He still shouted at me, and he was starting to complain about his ex and her dog. Yes, her dog. He then proceeded to tell me how he used to abuse the shit out of that dog, and then went into detail about how he wouldn't feed or water it because it used the bathroom in the house, and how he would kick it really hard. I'm absolutely horrified at this point, especially considering the whole time he's been telling me this story, he's been playing fetch with his own dog. His dog always seemed so scared of him, and I'd actually even pointed that out in the past. He would tell me that his dog's previous owners were abusive, so he's just very scared and distrusting. The dog was always very excited to see me though, and would always cuddle up with me and stay right by me, so I just always thought I was extra special. But now with that newfound knowledge, I think that poor dog is just in an abusive household. I was just so done with this guy that I cut him off and said that I needed to go because my friends were waiting for me. He has sent me several messages of gibberish whenever he's outside. He'll blow my phone up with non-stop random messages, and it'll just keep going on forever. He has texted me telling me that he knows I'm home because he's seen me walking around, or that he sees my car in the parking lot. He'll throw his dog's toys on my porch, and he'll stand outside of my porch for hours. I think in his mind, since I'm a smoker, I'll eventually come outside. Silly him though, because whenever I see him out there, I'll just go out front. Before the wine fiasco ever went down, he had said several things to me that were also red flags. I guess the moral of the story is to just trust your gut. Still to this day, he's bothering me, and like I had said before, we only spoke and hung out for a couple of weeks in summer of 2020. My last message from him was last night. He asked me what he had done wrong, and if I had felt disrespected in any way. I haven't spoken to him since he screamed at me for not sleeping with him. I thought about answering his text with the brutal truth about how twisted and creepy he presented himself as, along with how uncomfortable he made me feel, but I didn't want to give him any ideas on how he should improve. Stay smart, folks. Don't ever drink things people give you if the seal is broken. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that he was definitely trying to drug me. Before starting the story, I wanted to share some context. I'm a 26-year-old female who unfortunately gets a lot of unwanted attention. I'm married, and at the time of this story, my husband's brother had lived with us. We live in newly built townhomes, and everyone in the unit had actually moved in within the same week of each other. In the townhome next to us lived a mom and her late 20, early 30-year-old son, and next to them lives another young married couple. We'll call her I and him P. We became friends with them because we're in the same age group. Now, this happened a little over a year ago, and we noticed that the mom and son had a guest staying with them. We didn't think much of it. Well, one morning I was walking my dog, and as soon as I walked out the door, I began to smell cigarettes. But I didn't really think too much of it because my brother-in-law smokes. Right in front of our townhome is a long patch of land that hasn't been built on yet, and I always walk my dog around there every morning. Once I reached it, I had heard someone behind me then say,
"You look really lovely today."
I looked back, and I saw that it was the guy that had been staying with my neighbor. I was kinda confused because I had just rolled out of my bed still in my PJs. He then said good morning, and I said good morning back. He then asked if I smoked, and I said no. I was already getting really creeped out by this guy, so I just kept walking, and by the time I walked back home, he was already gone. When I got inside and told my husband, he thought it was odd. We don't really know anything about this guy or who he is, so my husband just told me to be careful when I walk our dog. The very next morning when I went to walk our dog, I looked out to see if the creepy neighbor was out. I didn't see him, so I went on a walk. About a minute later, I had felt someone behind me, and as I looked around, lo and behold, it was him. I walked a little faster to put some distance between us, and that's when our dog needed to do her business. That's when I took her to the side so that my dog could poop. That's when the neighbor got closer to us, and the dog started barking and wouldn't stop. So I started to fast walk to a different spot in the neighborhood so that she could finish. He followed me there, and he got close yet again. It made me and the dog really uncomfortable, so I just decided to leave and go back home. Keep in mind, our dog still hasn't had a chance to do her business yet. Anyways, my husband was already at work, but I still wanted to call him to let him know what happened. He said to feed her and get ready for work, and maybe by the time I finished, the creepy neighbor would finally be back inside. So I did so, and when I decided to walk the dog again, I opened my front door, and to my surprise, he was in the middle of the road throwing punches. I closed my door immediately and decided to take her to my parents' house before going to work, and that I would just pick her up after I got off. During the rest of this week, I would only walk her whenever my husband was home because I just felt uncomfortable, but I wasn't really sure if it was just me being paranoid. He didn't follow me again, but every time I walked, he would go outside to smoke and just watch me. I did tell my family about this though, just so they would be aware. It was now the Tuesday right before Thanksgiving, and my mom and sister had decided to come over to help decorate the outside of my home for Christmas. I went inside to look for something, and one of my sisters and my mom had stayed outside. The creepy neighbor had came out and looked at them, and then said,
"Oh, there's two of you."
My sister and mom came back inside immediately because they felt uncomfortable, now knowing that he had followed me before. They stayed a little bit longer, but they had to leave because it was getting late. About 30 minutes later, my brother-in-law comes home, and I asked if he knew who the guy was staying with the neighbor. He asked me why and what was wrong, and I told him what had been happening. He then bolted out the front door, not saying where or what he was going to do. Since it was now midnight, my husband and I went to bed. I had to work all day the next day, so I didn't get a chance to talk to my brother-in-law and ask what happened. It's 2 days later and in the morning, which is now Thanksgiving Day, so I was walking my dog out like I normally do. On my way back, I see the mom who lives next door purposely checking her mail right at the same time I was walking outside. She then stops me and she asks me what the issue was that I was having with her son. So it's her son. And that's when I realized that he was probably there to stay and not just visiting. I then told her that he had been following me around in the neighborhood and that it made me really uncomfortable. She then went on to tell me that I had nothing to worry about and that he's really harmless, that he has some personal issues that he deals with by walking, but that he really means no harm. Not believing a word that she said, I replied back with, "Okay, thanks," then went back inside. When my brother-in-law came downstairs, I asked if he had talked to the mom. That's when he then told me what happened. He said that he banged on her door until she finally answered, and he told her to keep her son in check, and that if he ever hears that his sister-in-law has another encounter with him, they were going to have a serious problem. My brother-in-law is a pretty intimidating guy, and he has a really short temper, so he made it very clear not to screw around with me or my husband. Since he was so pissed off, he went over to INP's house to cool off. Since he's been living with us, he became pretty good friends with P, and he also told them what happened. About a week later, me and I went to lunch, and what she told me next made my heart just drop. Apparently, the creepy neighbor guy is bipolar as well as schizophrenic. She told me that all the things the creepy neighbor was doing to me, he was doing to other women as well. One woman actually tried to pepper spray him, and he actually blocked it and grabbed the pepper spray right out of her hands, which happened to be attached to her keys, and in the attempt of getting her keys from her, he had actually punched the woman in her face. The woman called the police and got a restraining order on him, so he couldn't live in the apartment complex anymore. His mom put him in a hotel while she figured out his living situation, and he was creeping out the other guests over there as well. The manager tried to kick him out, but the creepy neighbor started talking a lot of nonsense and threatened to shoot up the place. The manager had to get the police involved just to get him out of there. They had finally kicked him out, so he went to live with his aunt until his mom's lease was up and she was able to move. So that's why he lives with his mom again. The mom actually has the audacity to say that her son is harmless when he's even hit her. She's afraid of her own son. The mom told I this way before he ever moved back in with her. I haven't had an issue with him since my brother-in-law went over there. Luckily, I work enough to be out of the house, but I still try to avoid being home alone. It's absolutely horrible not feeling safe in your own home. I'm really looking forward to the day we move. For years, I've been paranoid about changing near or around a window. I think it all leads back to the story that I'm about to tell you. For the record, I'm a female, and this happened to me 10 years ago when I was 13. My parents had divorced when I was 1, and my brother was 3, so we would visit my dad in his mobile home every weekend. It was the summer before I started 8th grade, and I was at my dad's house with my brother for the weekend. My dad had to take my stepmom to a doctor's appointment that was right down the street for a few hours. He had done this before because we had cell phones and we never really left the house because we didn't really have any friends over at my dad's. My brother is 2 years older than I am, so he was considered the responsible one. We had a routine that we would follow every time we visited my dad. Get up and sneak whatever breakfast we could before our stepmom got up, and then I'd watch a movie in my room and my brother would play the Xbox in his room, which was right next to mine. I had just finished up watching Live Free or Die Hard when I decided to get dressed and start my chores. The way that my room was set up, I had a rolled bunk bed pressed against the window so that my feet would be facing the window and my head would be near the door. The TV was right across from that, so there was only a little narrow area in the middle where I could walk or get dressed. My dog Chester was on the bottom bunk laying in what little sun came into my room. As I was finishing putting my t-shirt on, I noticed that Chester had sat up looking towards the window. He slowly moved towards it and then started to growl. Now, my dog wasn't really that intimidating and he really only barked whenever he was excited or when someone knocked on our door, but I had never heard him growl before, like ever. Immediately I was on alert, really unsure of what was going on. I got as close to the far wall as I could and then looked out the window. I didn't see anything and I tried to calm him down, but me getting closer to the window seemed to only get him even more protective. Right after I had walked away was when you get that really bad feeling you get when you just know you're being watched. As I turned, I saw a right hand come up to the glass on my window and then pause right before the left one joined it. I froze in place when finally a face appeared that I had recognized. It was my neighbor that was 5 houses down from us. He had always given me the creeps, and I guess my intuition was right. He was looking around my room when his eyes finally landed on me. He gave me this really eerie smile and he gestured for me to come to the window. I just shook my head and reached for the baseball bat that I had on my wall. My dog was going absolutely apeshit seeing this guy look at me, now snarling and lunging at the window. The guy tried to slide open my window, and that's when I yelled for my brother. I think that the man thought I was home alone because the horror that came across his face when my brother ran in then made him realize he couldn't do anything to me. He took off running down the street to his house while my brother and I shouted at him from the porch while my dog was fighting to try and get past us to chase him. My brother and I sat on the couch after that and talked about what happened. We pretty much both agreed that it would just be smarter to never tell our dad about it and that I was never to walk near his house. The only thing that I really regret from this incident was that our other neighbor that my stepmom was really close with was actually attacked by him a few months later. I had felt that because I didn't say anything that I'd actually allowed it to happen. Luckily she wasn't hurt, but when I told her about the man and what he did, she gave me a hug and she agreed that it wasn't something to tell my dad, but that she would handle it. I guess she did, because a year later he was then gone and I never saw him again after that. I only really told my dad's mom about the incident when she had moved into the house and I was already 21 years old and didn't stay the weekends anymore. I told her to never tell my dad because I just knew how he'd react. Well, that didn't happen, and later that night my dad ended up chewing me out for not telling him. I told him that if he knew what had happened, my weekend visits to him would have been in prison because he probably would have gone over to the man's house and killed him. He agreed, but he wanted me to tell the full story to him and my stepmom. Despite how long ago this was, I'm still really afraid I'll see him again. That he'll end up being a dot on a map near my house, or that I'll wake up with him peering through my window. Due to this event, it really turned me into a really paranoid person. Anytime there's a little sound near the window whenever I'm getting dressed, I kid you not, I'm always reaching for something to fight for my life. If it wasn't for my dog and the fact that I changed so fast, who really knows what the man would have tried to do to me or what he would have seen when he looked in my window. To everyone out there, please stay vigilant and always trust your gut. Before my husband and I got married, we were living together in a mediocre apartment complex in a similarly mediocre part of the city. Now, it wasn't an especially dangerous place, but security at the complex was severely lacking. For context, I once had my car stolen right out of the parking lot in broad daylight without anyone noticing. Another issue with the complex's parking lot was its shortage of spaces. This was usually more of an annoyance than anything, but on one occasion, it had put me in very real danger. I was still finishing my degree at the time, and I had night classes that, in combination with an hour-and-a-half commute, left me getting home on most nights well after 11 p.m. Often I was lucky enough to find a space in the main parking lot by my building, but there were a few occasions when I found myself having to park in a much farther lot. This lot was very poorly lit, it had no buildings near it, and usually had very few cars in it. It was creepy in and of itself, but what really scared me about it was the extended walk from it. As a 21-year-old woman, I had already had plenty of experience with creeps, late-night walks, and unpleasant combinations of the two, but usually those walks were down a street or somewhere more public. Walking alone through this big, dark, empty lot really made me feel like sitting prey. No one had noticed when someone stole my car in the middle of the day. Why should I expect anyone to notice if something happened to me there in the middle of the night? With all this going through my head most nights to begin with, there was one evening in particular when getting out of my car just felt like a really bad idea. Now, I'm not a superstitious person, but my intuition was buzzing from the very minute that I unlocked my door. I'd only taken a few steps when I had spotted a man standing stock still right by the dumpster near my building. He didn't have any trash. He wasn't looking through it. He wasn't smoking. He wasn't doing anything. He was just standing there looking at me. I was still all the way across the parking lot, but other than getting back in my car, there was no way around him. The dumpster was squarely in the middle of the two entrances to my building, so no matter which way I went, I'd have to walk directly toward him. My keys were already between my fingers, but I wasn't feeling very confident about whether this would help or not. I'm not a strong person, and I'm also only about 5'3". More than anything, I felt silly for being so afraid, but I knew in my gut something was wrong. This man had appeared out of nowhere. I'd driven past the dumpster on my way into the lot, and he hadn't been there. Also, I knew what everyone in my building had looked like, and there's absolutely no way that he would have had time to get there from another building between when I passed the dumpster and when I parked. As I got closer, it became increasingly obvious that I wasn't imagining the man staring at me, especially because, as I got closer, he turned his body so that he was always facing me, kind of like a sunflower, just rotating in place, always watching me. Then came the moment when I had to pass him to get to the door. I felt really silly doing it, but I turned around and walked half backwards as I got close to passing him. I left a really wide space between us as I drew near by walking in the grass instead of on the sidewalk, but I still didn't want to turn my back on him. Eventually, though, I had to, and the second I did, I heard footsteps. Not just footsteps, but running footsteps. They were coming toward me and really fast, so I ran too. I sprinted to the building, ran up the steps to the door, entered the pen as quickly as I could, and then hoped to hell that he wouldn't be able to follow me. I didn't stop running until I got to my apartment door, 3 flights of stairs later. My neighbors were probably pissed about the noise, but I was terrified. The second I got in the door, I told my then fiance everything that happened between panic breaths, and he immediately called security. While he did, I went to go peek through the balcony window to see if I could spot the man. I couldn't. He was nowhere to be seen. When security finally arrived, they reported the same. No one was around. I still have no idea what the man was doing there before I got there or where he came from, and I've moved across town since then. but to that really creepy guy from my apartment parking lot. I really hope to never encounter you ever again. This happened about 2 weeks ago, or sometime around the beginning of the month. I, a 15-year-old female, and my 13-year-old little sister were staying at my older sister's apartment for a day. She had just gotten a kitten and she needed us to watch her for a day. So we went over to her apartment one night and would stay overnight, and then the next day until she came home from work. As you can all guess, due to COVID, me and my sister are doing school virtually, so we just brought our school laptops and supplies with us. My older sister had left for work that morning, sometime around 6 to 6:30 a.m. I believe. Me and my younger sister woke up at around 7 and we started getting ready for school. Before my older sister left for work, she had locked the door behind her. This'll be important later. There's also a chain on the door, but I mean, it obviously can't be accessed from outside of the apartment. One of the very first things I did that morning on instinct was to put the chain on the door. I tend to be an overly careful person, so it was just natural for me to do this. One thing that I really remember specifically was that I didn't even touch the lock on the door, just the chain. I wasn't really sure if it was locked or not, and I didn't want to accidentally unlock it. So I went with the idea that my older sister most likely already locked it, and that I shouldn't have to mess with it. I didn't really think anything of it afterwards. Me and my younger sister decided it would be easier to focus if we were working in different rooms of the apartment. So she took my older sister's bedroom and I decided to stay in the living room. Now, the living room is the first room you walk into when you open the front door. The whole space is pretty open into a small kitchen and a den. Right past the den is the bedroom. So me and my sister weren't really that far apart from each other. Anyway, let's skip ahead about 2 hours. My class was just about to end and I started to hear this really violent banging on the front door. At first, I thought maybe I was just misinterpreting where the noise was coming from, and I thought maybe it was someone banging on a different door right next to us. We weren't expecting anyone to be there or anything, and my mind didn't immediately pick up that someone could want to get in for whatever reason. I assumed that maybe someone got locked out of their apartment next to us or something and was trying to just wake up their roommate. Probably not super logical of me, but I was starting to get really nervous. The banging was extremely loud now, but I never heard a voice. I also want to add that I was only a few feet away from the door, so if someone would have said something, I definitely would have heard it. The banging then went on for about 5-ish minutes, maybe even a little more. I was definitely freaked out, but I decided not to move. I texted my little sister during the whole thing, and I told her that someone was banging on the door. She told me she could hear it too, and she thought that maybe I had dropped something. Then I told her that I was starting to get really freaked out. Then it stopped. For maybe about 2 minutes, there was nothing but silence. I thought maybe that was the end of it, but after that 2 minutes, it just started right back up again. I was still in my math class. My teacher's trying to tell us about the homework, and there's someone violently banging on the door right next to me. I was getting panicky now. I start wondering if I'm gonna die or something, but just ignore it and try and focus on my teacher. The banging continued for another maybe 5 to 7 minutes, and right in the middle of it, I think I heard a click. If I could describe it, it almost sounded like a door unlocking. But I thought there was no way that could be it. I'm just being irrational. I started to kind of joke to myself to just watch as the door handle would dramatically slowly turn and then the door would open. Well, about a second later, I watched as that exact scenario then happened in real time. I froze. The door handle was then opened slowly. The room was silent. I didn't dare say anything. I was just way too scared beyond belief. The door had started to open, but not all the way, because I had put the chain on it earlier that morning. The door was now at a slight angle so that I couldn't see the person, but I don't think they could have seen me either. I mean, not unless they put their face right through the door or something. After about 3 seconds of silence, the door slowly shut and the banging just stopped. I got up immediately to go lock the door. What's so great about this is that I was so nervous that I just ignored the fact that someone literally tried to break into the apartment. My teacher, peers, even my own sister were all just kind of oblivious to the fact that we were just in real danger just now. After both of our classes finally ended, me and my younger sister started talking about it. She also texted my older sister and told her what happened. We literally just went on with our day like nothing happened, and when my older sister got home that day, she had started asking us more about it. I had started to tell her the story in more detail, and as she drove us home, she had called who I believed was the landlord. So as it turns out, a few weeks before this happened, my sister had called for maintenance so that they could come to her apartment and fix one of her bathrooms. So she thought maybe it was them. When she called the landlord, she asked if the maintenance would give her notice or let her know beforehand if they were coming. She also asked if they would let her know that it was maintenance, just so she would know who it was. To be honest, I don't really remember the woman's response to my sister's first question, but she definitely said maintenance would call out to her or something. My sister also mentioned that the banging was so violent that the door frame had actually been damaged. The woman said that their staff wouldn't ever damage the property. Now remember when I said I heard a click and the door unlocked? Well, maintenance has a key to every door. My sister had her key as well as the spare one. The woman said she would talk to maintenance and ask if they had been there, to which they later confirmed they hadn't. We also asked if the locks ever got changed. They said they were changed as soon as the last tenant left, so it definitely wasn't someone who used to live there and still had a key or something. I really have no idea how this person unlocked the door. It's crazy to me. The woman recommended that if she found out that it was a maintenance, that we should definitely file a police report. I think it was maybe a day later. My older sister was leaving for work again. She realized as she was leaving that she forgot her water bottle, and she went back to go grab it. She made sure to lock her door again as she left. She was pretty freaked out from the previous event and was really hypervigilant, so we're pretty damn sure that she locked it on her way out. Well, she got back home from work that day and found that the door to her apartment was wide open. After this event, I believe she finally filed the police report. I just really hate that I acted so stupidly. I should have called the police right as that second wave of banging hit. At any moment, I could have looked through the peephole. I could have seen this person's face. Maybe if I had moved or gotten up even just a little, I could have gotten a look at them. But I was so scared that I just froze. I know what I should have done in this situation. Call the police, maybe grab a knife from the kitchen or some sort of weapon, hide, etc. But in that moment, I didn't do anything. I really don't think that I even fully comprehended just how much danger I was in until the door opened. I hoped that if I didn't say anything, they would just leave. And well, I guess they did. I know I should be trying to go easy on myself. Taking that into consideration, I'm still only 15 years old. I've never been in a situation like that before. I've never really been trained for that sort of situation. I mean, unless you want to include scary movies or something. Funnily enough though, I guess I'm the dumb person in a horror movie. I don't do anything smart in the face of danger, and there's also the fact that I have pretty severe anxiety. I've never been formally diagnosed with anything, but I know that I definitely have an unhealthy relationship with it, to say the least. I have really bad anxiety on an almost daily basis, and I've had multiple panic attacks as well. I've missed so much school, and at one point I even went to see a therapist about it when I was 13. I was tested on the adult anxiety test, and my therapist actually told me that it was concerningly high. So to say that I can't properly deal with emotions is fair. I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I didn't do anything. I thought I was being irrational. I'm just so used to thinking that I'm blowing something out of proportion that I assumed I was just doing it again. Then again, maybe I'm just trying to justify my stupidity. I guess I'm just still really annoyed with myself, like I could have done better. The only thing I can really do now is just to hope that nothing like this ever happens again. But if it does, I know what to do now. So far, me and my family have a few theories. We figured this person maybe learned my older sister's routine and thought nobody would be home. Once the door opened and he saw the chain, he realized that people were inside and then left. We also thought that maybe he got in by taking an old key or something and jammed it into the lock and then banged on it to unlock it. Maybe he somehow got a key to the apartment though. I thought for a while maybe when I put the chain on, I really did unlock the door. I don't think so though. I'm really not sure of anything at this point. These are all just theories and we're not professionals by any means. If anything else happens, I'll definitely give an update. This happened to me about 2 weeks ago. I had started university in September and therefore live in a students-only apartment complex. There's about 4 other apartments in my hallway, and sometimes we just spend time in each other's apartments. I had the absolute chance to lose my keys during the first week of university. It wasn't really a big deal though, I just simply paid for another key. After about a week in my apartment though, I had started to notice that some of my things weren't in the same place as I thought that I'd put them. It didn't really scare me though, because I know I'm a distracted person. On the day of the incident in question, I was coming home earlier than usual with another student named Thomas, the boy that lives in the apartment next to mine. We got inside and when I unlocked my door, I had saw a woman right inside my apartment. As you can expect, it really scared me. But right as I was about to ask her what the hell she was doing there, she then told me, "Oh, sorry, I didn't know you'd be home this early. I'm the janitor. I clean the rooms weekly." She then just smiled at me and went out. Now, I didn't even know we had a janitor, but this kind of explained why my stuff was moving around. Thomas then noticed that she had left her keys on my desk and said that I should give them back to her. When I took a closer look though, I then realized that those were my lost keys. The night then passed and I decided to talk to the man in charge of the complex about this. I told him that the janitor had lost my keys and I asked for my money back. He just looked at me in total incomprehension and he then told me, "But we don't even have a janitor." Right at that moment, I just froze. Then who the hell went in my apartment for the past few weeks? Why was she there? We didn't call the police because, nothing had been stolen. But I still decided to search for cameras in my apartment, because you just never really know with these psychopaths. I haven't seen her since, and I'm really glad to know that she can't enter the complex anymore without the badge on the keys. So yeah, that was a really creepy experience. I was a high school student living with my mother in a 3rd floor apartment. I used to sleep in the living room because the apartment only had 1 bedroom, and well, it was my mom's. I was pretty happy with the little space I had though, and I was a really happy kid. I always got up at about 6 a.m. to go to school, and my mom always got up at 5 a.m. to have time to shower and make breakfast before then dropping me off at school and heading to work. During that morning, I remember waking up and all the lights were on. Every single one of them, even the one in my room. I went to grab my phone, but it wasn't there. Okay, pretty odd. I headed to the bathroom and I saw that all the drawers and doors of every furniture we had were open. I was deeply confused at this point. Anyways, my mom came out of the bathroom and she asked me what the hell I had been doing. I told her I had no idea what she was talking about, and I thought that she did it since she was always up at least 1 hour earlier than me. I had also asked her if she had seen my cell phone, since I still didn't really know where it was. Then I saw it. Deep inside her green eyes, the realization. I could distinctly see the fear and all the pieces inside her head clicking in place. She then leaped to the kitchen and found the window wide open, a kitchen knife on the ground, and some really dusty fingerprints on the wall where someone had put weight on to climb inside. It was then when my sleepy-headed self had put the pieces together too. Someone somehow climbed all the way up to our balcony, got inside the apartment, and then robbed us. All while I was asleep in my bed right there in the living room. My mom hugged me and asked me if I was okay. I said that I never heard anything and that I didn't even wake up when this unknown person turned on the lights and rummaged through our stuff. It was super weird. They didn't dare to try and open my mom's bedroom door, so she didn't notice a thing. My grandma claims that it was some angel that protected me that night, and that's why I didn't wake up. But I don't believe in that stuff. I don't think they knew I was there either. The police never found the robber, and we ended up putting steel bars on the window. We ended up moving some time after that. This all happened to me when I was still in high school. It's been about 6 years since that happened. My mother and I have moved from that apartment, and I'm now grown and living with my boyfriend. But even today, I'm still really paranoid, and I always wonder why I didn't wake up, even though I'm really grateful that I didn't. Thank God for that. Last Sunday, I was at my boyfriend's apartment for the weekend. The boyfriend left to go to work at about 8 a.m., but not before giving me a kiss on the head. This had woke me up, but by the time I could open my eyes, he was already gone and out the door. He had actually forgot to lock the apartment door on his way out, to which I hadn't realized. I got up, put my contacts in, brushed my teeth, and then put my workout clothes on. I started my day off right with some good squats and crunches. Then I made myself some coffee and toast. I decided to hop on the computer to look up some hotels and restaurants. Me and my boyfriend wanted to take a little in-state vacation, so that's why I was doing this. Now, the entry door leads directly to the open kitchen and living room area, which is where his PC is. I start to hear the sound of the door handle turning, and I get really excited thinking that maybe my boyfriend is coming home for an early lunch. It was about 10 a.m. at this point. The door quickly opens, and I see an older man then step in. He looked to be in about his 60s or 70s. My first thought was maybe he's the electrician that the landlord said was going to be stopping by, but I thought that it was odd that he didn't even knock, and the fact that he wasn't even wearing pants. Luckily, he was wearing underwear though. This guy then speed walked into the apartment with a really glossed over look. I was mostly polite in the beginning, then saying, "Sir, who are you? What are you doing here? This isn't your apartment." I then progressively began shouting and cussing him out, but nothing would faze him. He went straight into the dining table over a large cardboard box that my boyfriend had full of board games. He then sat on them. He literally sat on the games. It looked like he was going to take a dump on them or something, but then he just tried laying down on the games. I then got up and ran to the bathroom, absolutely terrified for my safety as I'm only about 5'2", and definitely not as strong as I'd like to think I am. This guy was about 6 foot, and God knows how many drugs he was on. I dialed 911 and informed the operator on everything that happened, as I'm totally shaking at this point. She asked if I'd be able to safely leave the bathroom to let the police in. I told her it was no need and that it was unlocked, as that's how the guy got in the first place, then gave a little laugh, to which she then laughed too. I heard the cops at the door, but they were talking to each other. I opened the bathroom door, then peeked into the living room. No guy. I got really nervous about checking the bedroom because I'd have to go around a corner and I wouldn't really be able to see that well. That's when I suddenly hear, "Sir, where are your pants at?" from the hallway. I'm standing right at the door to listen and texting my boyfriend everything that's happened. They eventually got the guy in cuffs and the druggie just kept shouting how they were hurting his hands. The officers then ask him where he lives and what he's doing here. As it turns out, the guy apparently lives about 7 streets away and he says he's just trying to go to bed. Well, that's definitely not happening here. My boyfriend came home shortly after and comforted me. We went downstairs to see if the police needed my statement before they took off with the guy. I couldn't believe their response.
Nah, don't worry about it. We already got it from 3 other people.
We found out that he went into every unlocked apartment that he could. An officer walked by with a gallon Ziploc bag completely full of pill bottles. We found his pants and shoes in the hallway. Please, everyone, always lock your doors. This happened a couple of months ago, and I'm finally feeling safe being alone again. It was around 1:30 p.m. when my dog started barking for me to take him outside. I had put him on his leash and walked outside my first floor apartment, leaving the door unlocked behind me like I had done a million times before. Seriously, I never ever thought twice about it, as I live in a really safe neighborhood in an extremely safe, almost boring town. In my 27 years of living here, nothing had ever tested that sense of security before. My dog is 15 years old, so he moves a little slow and really loves taking his time sniffing around. He'll usually just stop and pee about 3 different times and then take that day as no different. But suddenly, a big white truck filled with lawn equipment slowed down right in front of me.
Hey, make sure you pick up after your dog.
I then looked up and saw a man in his late 40s or so, wearing polarized sunglasses and a bandana around his lower mouth and neck. He just peed. I responded with a little bit of attitude, like, thanks, but I got this. Now drive away. I looked up yet again, and he then gave me a wink and then lowered his bandana to blow me a kiss right before he drives away. This man had instantly made me really uncomfortable. But as a young Hispanic female, I had been pretty used to older Hispanic men being inappropriate like that. They've been doing it for years. It's just a really sad reality. But once again, I didn't really think too much into it. I was walking back to my apartment now when a woman came out of her apartment in the next building over and then stood on her patio, motioning for me to come to her. Now, I've never met this lady in my life before. I had seen her around the complex and she seemed pretty nice enough, but ultimately I didn't really know her. I've watched Dateline before, so I'm definitely not going up to her patio. I asked her what she wanted and she just insisted that I go over there so that she could tell me. I told her that I really needed to bring my dog back inside my apartment, but that maybe I could help her from outside where I was if she just told me. Next thing I know, this woman is now freaking running right toward me. That's when I picked up my dog ready to run home, and that's when she stopped probably about 5 feet away from me, and then she said, "Look, please listen to me. A man walked to your apartment while you were walking your dog. I think he was one of the mowers. I was sitting in my car when I saw him walk in, and I know you live there alone. I called 911 and they're on their way now." I could feel my face burning as I was trying to process what I just heard. I'd watched the man that I had talked to drive away. I didn't see his truck anywhere. How could that be possible? What I didn't realize was that while I was talking to him, he had positioned his truck right in the line of sight of my apartment. I couldn't see my door, so I was totally distracted and looking away while another man had walked right inside my apartment. If my neighbor didn't happen to be sitting in her car while on the phone, I would have walked right into my apartment, completely unaware that someone would be inside of it waiting to do God knows what to me. I'm honestly so thankful that she was so observant even prior to the incident, because she knew that there shouldn't be anyone else in that apartment, and she had a really bad gut feeling that something was wrong. The police arrived not even 5 minutes later and arrested the guy. This guy actually told the police that he had permission to use my restroom, which was freaking obviously not true. Since my door was unlocked and we can't really prove what his intentions were when he entered, he was only charged with trespassing. That's actually a misdemeanor in my state, and he did no jail time, which obviously really freaked me out because this guy knew where I lived. The man driving the truck technically didn't really do anything wrong, but it's really scary to think that they might have been working together. I ended up staying with my parents until we were able to find a legal loophole to get me out of my lease and move out of that apartment ASAP. I moved into a house with an old friend of mine and got a ring system installed that same day. My dog has his own backyard now. My dad mows the lawn for us. And I still sometimes get coffee with the neighbor who called the cops for me. Even to this day, I'm so thankful for her gut feeling. Honestly, if it wasn't for her, God knows what could have happened.
The following story is something I never really talk about. Something that I hate bringing up constantly, but I feel like I need to get it off my chest. It happened around 2 spring breaks ago, but it continues to traumatize me to this day. I'm an Instagram model and an aspiring supermodel from Glendale, California, a city in the greater LA area. My modeling career was starting to really take off. I was getting some clothing brand deals and was starting to get a higher amount of followers. I eventually expanded my income sources from just Instagram modeling to other things. One of them was OnlyFans. I started an OnlyFans account where my followers and fans can pay to see more exclusive photos of me, and that seemed to be going great. I never got any requests from any creeps, and people were overall accepting of my decision. I eventually started gaining a lot of friends from both the online modeling and OnlyFans community. I even started collaborating with other online models and influencers. I ended up meeting a girl named Megan through other Instagram and OnlyFans connections. Megan was actually newer to this whole gig than me, but was gaining traction even quicker. Things were going really good for her, and we eventually met in person at an event. She seemed really chill, and soon a friendship was born. We would do various collaborations on OnlyFans and Instagram, and would eventually even just hang out for the fun of it. One night, however, I was scrolling through my emails and got a text message from Megan. Apparently, a really famous online influencing team is interested in both Megan and I. Sure, I'd been scouted before, but never from an organization this large. Apparently, an agent from the modeling group reached out to Megan after seeing a photo of her and I on Instagram. They said they'd like to collaborate with us on Instagram, giving us a large sum of money and free promotion of our OnlyFans in return. It seemed great, but almost too good to be true. I wanted to confirm myself that this was a legitimate agent and not some sort of troll or scam, but when I checked the supposed agent's profile, everything seemed to check out. He had a lot of followers, real posts, and a professional page. His email had a proper domain on it too. This was really happening. Megan and I immediately asked the agent for more details, and he explained to us how it'd work. They were based in San Diego, about 2 hours away from us in LA. They wanted to do a quick photo shoot with both of us in it and discuss future opportunities while we were there. They claimed they had booked out a hotel room in the south of San Diego, and they do the shoot at a local beach. It seemed legit, so we set up a time and booked a bus over there. I was excited, but not as much as Megan though. Megan was thrilled for the whole idea. She had only been at this for about a year, and now she was working with the big companies already. It was like a dream come true for her. We eventually arrived at the hotel, and while it wasn't a 5-star resort, it was decent. We were greeted by an unusually casually dressed man at the front door. "Megan and Lisa, right?" he asked us with a grin on his face. "Yes, that's us," replied Megan jubilantly. "Alright, follow me. We got a room booked for you guys upstairs." The man guided us to our hotel room and we unpacked. Megan was still ecstatic. "Can you believe this is happening?" she asked. I was happy too, but I kept doubting her decision. The man who escorted us to our room didn't seem very professional, but hell, he could just be having a long day. Eventually we got a knock on the door. It was the man from before. He said he'd take us to the venue once we were ready, and we were. He picked us up in a rather nice car, but something didn't add up. He claimed it was the company car, but it clearly had a local rental sticker on the license plate. I again shrugged it off and got in the car. Throughout the car ride, he kept eyeing us from the rearview mirror. He asked us a few basic questions like how was our flight and where we were from. He really wasn't that inviting, especially for a brand ambassador. I started wondering again whether or not this was a bad idea, and whether I should ruin Megan's mood and let her know of my concerns. But my thought was interrupted by the car coming to a halt. We had arrived. It was a small and secluded beach area, and honestly, it was beautiful. We were going to be doing our shoot on a boat which is parked at the shore, and we would be traveling to a small nearby island with another beach on it. On the boat was about 4 to 6 men, middle-aged, and seemingly they were the camera crew. The boat was actually quite large. It was no yacht, but it did have an upper deck and a lower floor. The whole setup was a bit unusual, especially for a company of this size. I didn't see much equipment or a supervisor at all. No director, no makeup artists, just the men. Before we all got on, they searched through our handbags and said they'd hold on to them for the ride. This was really starting to alarm me, but the boat started moving and we were on our way. While Megan went up the deck and enjoyed the breeze, I went to the lower compartment of the boat and used a very small bathroom in it. As I was washing my hands, I couldn't help but think of how odd this whole gig was. I didn't see a single camera in sight, and the men on board seemed to be trying to pass as much time as possible. That's when I saw a shadow from the door. Underneath it was a pair of feet. Someone was watching me. I quickly thought about what to do. Why was this man just standing there? Was he waiting to use the bathroom too? Did he just happen to be waiting by the door while I was there? Next thing I noticed, there was 2 pairs of feet under the door, side by side. I knew that they were ganging up on me at this point. I mustered every last bit of courage in me and barged open the door, knocking both of them over. While they were down and in pain, I quickly thought of what to do next, but that's when it hit me. Megan was still at the top deck. I then heard violent trashing followed by Megan's muffled screams. I quickly ran up the stairs only to be tripped over by one of the men. I grabbed a water bottle from nearby and threw it at his head. That seemed to keep him off me for a bit. But as I got on my feet and tried to run towards the room where Megan's screams were coming from, he tried to headlock me from behind. I violently trashed around and bit down on his hand as hard as I could. He yelled in pain and threw me off to the side. I tripped over the side railing and landed in the water, still hearing Megan's screams all muffled up. I tried to swim back to the boat, but it was useless. I somehow managed to float back ashore and was taken in by a local lifeguard crew. They took me into the emergency room where they tended to my fight wounds, and I explained to them and the police everything that happened. The boat, the hotel, the rental car, the sketchy men. They managed to make 1 or 2 arrests in San Diego, but the men who took Megan were never found. The police believed that they had crossed into Tijuana and were somewhere off in Mexico. They even tried getting Mexican law enforcement in it too, but they couldn't find anything either. Not even the hotel and car rental company had any answers. I was shattered. I lost my best friend solely due to the fact that I didn't want to speak up on my suspicions. When I asked the modeling agency how they could just let this happen and how they could hire people like this, they promptly replied to me stating that they never hired a man of this name. The account, the followers, the photos, the email, all of them were fake. It turns out the entire thing was some sort of lure for a human trafficking ring, and Megan and I were the victims. To this day, I still don't know where Megan is. This incident has left me traumatized and left my career changed permanently. The story I'm about to tell you is something that I'm still in disbelief of today. Crazy things happen all the time, but even with that in mind, the situation I was knee-deep in was honestly unfathomable. I struggle to even listen to the words OnlyFans without shuddering today. This happened when I was in college, so really not that long ago. I was an engineering student, and I would often find myself in the library either doing work or catching up with other students in my college. The library was an interesting place. It seemed to attract a lot of different students from all over campus, all with their own unique tastes and experiences. The people and their thinking processes were very diverse. This meant that I'd end up meeting people with a widely different series of interests than me. One of them was a beautiful young woman named Rose. We initially struck a conversation over something casual like our shoes or the weather, but soon considered ourselves decent friends. We eventually added each other on social media, and that's when I noticed it in her Instagram bio. She had an OnlyFans. Now I personally didn't care that much. It's honestly something that we're starting to see more and more in our day and age. But I eventually realized that Rose's OnlyFans was actually quite the topic on campus. Most people I'd met seemed to have some opinion or another about Rose's OnlyFans. The opinions seemed to be split in 2 different ways. One being impressed with her confidence and the fact that she's open about having an OnlyFans, and the other half being critical of her, feeling like she has no respect for herself and feeling that she'd do anything for money. Now I personally didn't care that much, but one night, Rose seemed to be doing some sort of promotion on her OnlyFans, and my curiosity spiked. She was giving out a month of free content and seemingly trying to gain a bigger audience. Now, signing up for an OnlyFans wasn't exactly on my list of plans for that night, but she was giving it out for free, and I figured I should check it out. After all, the whole school was talking about it, so I used a spam email of mine and signed up. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary, to be honest with you. Nothing unexpected. Sure, it was somewhat awkward seeing Rose in photos like that, but hey, what was I expecting? I took a look at her subscriber count, and she seemed to have quite a lot of them. I could imagine that she's making quite a lot of money with this. A week or two passed by, and I honestly forgot that I even signed up for an account. It was interesting and all seeing Rose's OnlyFans, but I honestly had better things to do. But eventually one of my college friends told me that something happened. He told me frantically to check her OnlyFans and social media. I opened my OnlyFans and saw it. She had been kidnapped. On her OnlyFans and Twitter was a photo banner with text on it. It stated that she'd been kidnapped, and the kidnappers were looking for a lot of ransom. It mentioned that we had a few days to get the money in, otherwise they'd harm her or kill her. They also included the detail that she's being kept at a secret location, so that they'd make sure that we wouldn't find her. This had to be some sort of joke, right? I immediately messaged her various times on every single platform. No response. I asked around to other people as to what they got from her. They got no response either. All of us were in a panicked state. We had no idea what was happening or what to do. Was Rose pulling some sort of sick joke? Was she okay? That's when it hit us. Rose hadn't been seen all that past week. At that point, we knew that something might have actually happened. No one, not even her close friends, had a clue where she could be. We waited for another day, wondering when she'd drop this sick sort of joke, but that never happened. We started looking for her. Everyone on campus looked up and down the place for her, but there was no sign. Whether it was her usual hangout spot or less known places, there was absolutely no trace of her every square inch of the university. We then asked our professors, and they said the same thing. Her attendance report revealed that she had been absent the whole week. Things just kept getting weirder and weirder. Some of her close friends even contacted her family asking where she was, but none of them knew where she was either. We were really starting to get worried at this point, but we didn't want to start paying the ransom just yet. After all, the kidnappers could just keep increasing the price. Several reports were signed to the university, and eventually a missing person case was submitted to the police. It started off with campus security looking around and scanning for where she could be, but evolved to a full-on police warrant and search investigation. Even the cops were a bit stumped with the whole situation. They'd obviously seen kidnappings before, but asking for a ransom on an online platform, that wasn't exactly heard of. The police looked around the university themselves, but there was still no sign of her. Eventually, a warrant for the search of Rose's home was finally approved, and we all looked inside her dorm. The apartment seemed completely normal, but her essential items such as her pillows and laptop were all gone. From this, we concluded that she might have been kidnapped while she was leaving and going somewhere. The police took a look at the security footage and noticed that her car seemed to have left the parking lot the supposed day of the kidnapping. The investigation was just getting weirder and weirder. All of us were extremely worried. We knew that someone or the other would have the motivation to kidnap Rose. After all, she was a wealthy, famous, and attractive young woman. She interacted with people online on a daily basis. There had to be some sort of creep or psycho who wanted to harm her. People had already started submitting small amounts towards her ransom. They just didn't want to take that risk of leaving it be. A day later, and it was trending all over social media. #SaveRose. The story even hit county news. Everyone in a 20-mile radius started talking about this, and eventually the police started to work overtime. They felt with the amount of publicity this case was getting, it really wouldn't look good on their part if they didn't find her. Eventually, the state troopers got involved too, and they started looking for her as well. The search continued, and with it our worries. Eventually, the ransom was paid off. So many people had pitched in small amounts that the money goal was hit. Was she free? Would the kidnappers just keep raising the ransom price? A few hours went by, but there was still no answer from Rose. We were at the peak of our fear. Normally something would happen by now, right? But no, none of us got an answer. But that next day, everything was answered. A highway patrol officer spotted the vehicle that was registered to Rose. It also was reported missing at the time. He immediately turned on his lights and pulled the car over. That was it, the moment of truth. As he got up to the car door, the officer spotted Rose. He immediately took her out of the car and inspected it thoroughly. but she was the only one in it. The news hit us that Rose had been found, and she was taken back to the police station for questioning. All of us were relieved. We didn't understand the mysterious nature of her kidnapping, but at this point we were just glad that she was okay and back. But once again, things just kept getting stranger and stranger. Rose did not have a single scratch on her. The paramedics and investigators found no sign of any physical or mental trauma. Kidnapping victims would normally have either one of these. Rose was being rather evasive with the questions as well. She was overall vague about the situation and didn't seem spooked the slightest bit. But after even more question dodging, Rose was released. The investigation continued, but when she got back on campus, all of us were thrilled. We were just so worried for her. We had so many questions. Questions which Rose didn't seem to want to answer. We understood why. After all, she deserved some much needed time to herself. I tried to ask her some more questions one-on-one when everyone left her apartment, but she seemed to still be acting odd. She avoided every single question in the weirdest way possible. I decided to call it a day and headed back to my room. As I continued my walk home, I couldn't stop thinking about it though. Everything about this whole situation was just so odd. And for Rose to come back like nothing even happened, it just contradicts everything I could even think of. But then, it struck me. The ransom, the lack of evidence, Rose's lack of answers, something deeper was happening, and it involved her. The next morning I got up, and my phone was flooded with notifications. Rose was arrested. According to various news sources and friends, Rose had faked the whole thing for money. Rose wanted to get some quick fame and cash and somehow thought that doing a fake kidnapping would be the answer. The reason that some of her essential items were missing was because she took them with her. She had left for some sort of beachside hotel. The location was remote enough to avoid suspicion, but not too close for comfort. She stayed there for a few days until the quote-unquote ransom was paid off. This explained everything. She was apparently caught after they tracked down all of the traffic cameras which spotted her car. They managed to find the location she had traveled to and back from. Rose was sued for all the ransom she collected, and lost even more than she gained in remaining lawsuits. She was charged with public mischief as well as false reporting. The charges stacked up to a high-level misdemeanor, and she was sentenced to a year in prison. My jaw was on the floor as I heard all of this. We were all so upset with her. So upset with ourselves. How could we really fall for this? How could she do such a thing? I still haven't heard from Rose, but the story is something that I will never forget. To this day, OnlyFans is something I'd never think of in the same light again. What I'm about to tell you is something that you probably won't even believe happened. Hell, not even in my wildest dreams did I fathom something like this occurring. I can't even put into words how awful my fear and anxiety was that day. Never in my life have I had to actually fear for my safety, but needless to say, I definitely will not be using OnlyFans ever again. This actually happened when OnlyFans was not that known. It was around 2017, which was 1 year after OnlyFans was founded. I came across a page which I was rather intrigued by on my Instagram feed. I stumbled across a very cute girl from my hometown, but I never really knew her. This was a time in my life where I was really introverted and rather socially awkward, so I had a lot of people added on my social media who I probably never even talked to. The only reason I even had Facebook and Instagram was to fit in as a college student. For reasons unknown, many very attractive women would always add me back on Instagram. I initially thought this was due to the fact that we had mutual friends or that I was just a very handsome man. But I eventually learned that following back was just a tactic to get more fame. It wasn't because of my charming looks. Now I was the kind of guy that would constantly like and comment under many hot girls' posts on Instagram. Some would call me a simp. Whenever I got a reply or like back from one of these women, I would immediately go to the PayPal or Cash App in their bio and leave them a huge tip with a thank you note. For some reason back then, this was my ego booster. I'm not exactly proud of this behavior today, but keep in mind that I was a rather different person back then. The sad part was my social anxiety prevented me from even DMing those girls. I didn't even try to make small talk with them. As sad as it is, I honestly expected these women to just ask me out and start giving me attention with all these donations I gave them. So with all of this in mind, you could imagine I was rather thrilled to see a new link in one of my favorite girls' bios. I immediately opened it and I was pleased with what I saw. The website was called OnlyFans, and now I could just subscribe and see any girl I want undress without having to constantly pay them and annoy them in the DMs. Even though I just found out another new money pit, I felt like I'd won $1 million. So I did what I'd naturally do, and I subscribed. I wanted to believe that I was her first subscriber, and it really did seem like it at first. Initially, she seemed a bit shy. She wasn't showing much of her body, and obviously this upset me. I was expecting a lot more for my $15 a month. What she was posting seemed to be things that you could just post on Instagram. There was no nudity whatsoever. No nipples, no nothing. But me being the simp I am, I thought if I somehow just kept the subscription, she'd notice me and eventually text me first. A few months went by and things seemed relatively normal. She started posting some decent nude photos, but somehow I wanted to see more. Aside from college, I was working at Starbucks, and I put all of my money into donations for her. I somehow felt that she was the one. I really thought that we would just go out one day and become lovers. But one day, I found out that OnlyFans had a new feature. Now, you could DM your OnlyFans model and get more intimate photos. All you had to do was make a photo request and they'd send a link with the payment. I was delighted. Now, I could get more intimate content, more than just nudes. So I mustered all the strength I could to text her, and I did. After all, getting some nudes was a good enough excuse to talk. I was shaking like never before. I really didn't know what to expect. But after a few minutes, she replied. We eventually started to actually get to know each other. I couldn't believe it. It was actually happening. It started off with her sending a few nude photos for about $100, but then asked me if I'm from the same city as her. After looking up my profile on Instagram with the same username, which happened to be my full name unfortunately, she realized that she had come across me a few times in public before. I was sweating and almost gave myself an anxiety attack. I didn't want her to find out who I am. Normally online, I'd give myself a name like one of my favorite video game characters, but this time, my browser automatically filled in my real first and last name, and I hit continue. I struggled to think of what to say. My mind was racing. She definitely had some mutual friends with me, and if they find out what I did online, they'd mock me endlessly at college. For some time, I tried to think of a way to escape the situation or leave the conversation, but I couldn't quite figure out anything. So I just answered with yes. From then on, we both got involved in an actual conversation. It turns out that she actually recognized me from college. She had seen me in person various times, and it turns out that one of her friends actually lives on the campus. We seem to have a lot in common, and we even realized that we were in the same place at the same time many times. We just never noticed each other. I was amazed. Never in my life did I think that I could have such a long and enduring conversation with someone, especially on OnlyFans. At this point, I was less interested in asking her for nudes, and more interested in asking her how her day went or how she was doing. It was almost like I finally had a genuine relationship with a girl for the first time in my life. I soon realized that money wasn't the way to win a girl, and the irony was she was spending way more time with me now than when I was spending money on her. But one day, she told me that I'm so nice that she wants to switch over to Instagram. She even let me know that I can call her and gave me her number. I was blown away. She really wanted to step up our relationship. I could finally get myself a real girlfriend. To be honest, I didn't even believe that this was possible. I genuinely thought I was just going to be single and behind a computer my whole life. Who knew I'd find my first girlfriend on OnlyFans? Things just kept getting better from then on. We were texting on Instagram for a while and I decided to actually call her. It was almost like I could feel a real connection with this woman. That was probably the first time I could call someone without getting a straight up panic attack. When we talked on the phone, it felt like we had the same personality. We were identical in so many ways. Her voice was just so pleasant and comforting, and we talked for hours during the next few days. I really thought that she would be the one. For the first time ever, I didn't want to wait any longer. I wanted to meet her in person as soon as possible. She was happy with the news and eventually invited me over to her house. We agreed on a proper date and time and hung up the phone. I felt like I was on top of the world. After years of criticizing myself and feeling like I wasn't good enough, I finally got one. I always thought that I needed to be like one of those Instagram fuckboys, but it turns out that casual nice guys like me do get a chance. The day of the date came and I dressed myself up in my best clothes and went to a barber. I was so eager to meet her. I instantly booked an Uber and he took me to her neighborhood. When I was approaching her house, however, I noticed an awkward man standing behind a tree. He seemed really sketchy and had a hood on. I couldn't even see his face or eyes. Normally this would alarm me, but I was just so eager to go on a date with her that I shrugged it off. She opened the door and she was just as gorgeous as she was online, even prettier than I expected in person. She put her shoes on and we went for a walk. In the beginning it was a little awkward, but I eventually got over the moments of dead silence and started an actual conversation with her. She seemed a bit nervous too, but once we got the ball rolling, everything went well. We had a really good conversation and didn't stop talking till the end of the date. I eventually walked her home and we waved goodbye. But as I was leaving, when I turned my head around to see what was happening, I noticed the same exact weird guy from before. He was awkwardly approaching me, at first trying hard to hide it by looking around or avoiding eye contact, but eventually he was around 10 feet away and there was no hiding this time. "Hey you," the man asked. Yeah, I replied. "Stop. Get over here." I stopped walking and turned around. Then he said, "Who are you to her?" Who am I to her? What kind of question was that? As I was trying to think of an answer, I looked back up at the man and noticed that he was getting insanely enraged. He had this crazed look in his eyes like he was about to hurt me or something. "You trying to hit on my girlfriend?" "Boy, you crossed a line," the man said. "What? I'm sorry, I think you're mistaking me for someone else. I really don't know what to say," I replied nervously. I started slowly backing away with my arm pushed out in front of me just for protection. I looked down at his hands and he had them both inside his hoodie front pocket. I saw his facial expression change from enraged to even more furious. He started breathing heavily and clenched his teeth in anger. "You shouldn't have come here," the man said. He then pulled out a gun from his front pocket and started firing it at me. I just fell on the sidewalk. I was in so much shock that I couldn't even feel any pain or take a breath. I just stared at him bluntly, adrenaline pumping through every ounce of my body. He then looked around and took off. After a few seconds, I let out a big, delayed scream. The adrenaline subsided and I felt like the worst pain in my life. I glanced around and I saw 2 big holes in the front of my knees. He shot me through both of my legs. I curled up in pain and started to black out. I was slowly drifting away and I completely lost consciousness. I woke up in the hospital, still in disbelief of what happened. My mom was sitting on a chair next to my bed asleep. She woke up quickly with a big smile and tears on her face. She explained to me what happened. One of the neighbors heard the gunshots and then spotted me in a puddle of blood. The guy that shot me had been taken into custody a few hours later. I had a few operations, but she told me that I would eventually walk after a long amount of time. I was devastated. I cried a lot that day. I asked myself why this could even happen. Why me? I could still feel the stabbing pain in my legs. It was unbearable. I couldn't sleep for the next few days. I could still feel the holes inside my knees, the bullets going into my leg. It was the worst pain of my life. I could barely move. That same day, I got a text from the girl I went on a date with, and it explained everything. The man was a subscriber to her OnlyFans like me. He also liked her and followed her on all social media. The only difference was the man was severely mentally ill, and he genuinely believed that she was his girlfriend. He often stalked her around town and somehow managed to track down her house. He was hiding there daily behind the trees and bushes, making sure no one else would come to her house. She didn't even know this until the cops brought out the neighbor's security camera footage. He really believed in some sort of imaginary relationship and really thought that she was cheating on him by going out with me. After a few months, my health got a bit better. and I gained my knee strength a bit back. According to the doctors, my legs would never be the same. The medics said that the human body rarely recovers completely from gunshot wounds, and that I probably would never be able to run or be able to do any heavy activity on my legs for the rest of my life. I lost contact with the girl shortly after that. There was too many emotions tied with her, and there was no way I'm letting something like this happen again to me. She didn't seem to want to delete her OnlyFans account either, so both of us went our separate ways. I still don't know what happened to that man who shot me. Part of me feels bad for him and his condition, but the other half of me wants him to spend years in prison. I will never forgive him for the permanent damage to my legs. And that was the last time I ever went on OnlyFans.
This happened a few years ago. During my sophomore year of college, I suddenly had to switch dorms due to housing and residence life at my university being completely awful to me and a few other student workers. Long story short, I lost my job and I actually had to move within a day. My parents came 5 states away and made a huge fuss in the housing office so that I was able to get more moving time. This is really important later in the story. I used to go on Instagram Live a lot because I'm a music minor and practicing in front of an audience really helps me improve my piano skills. I guess Instagram had begun offering the feature of showing stories and lives on the Explore page, so I ended up getting a lot of views and comments from strangers. Nothing too bad. It was usually just song requests that I couldn't fulfill because I had a strict repertoire from my piano professor, or hard eyes from strangers. I used to really enjoy the lives until I got a comment from a man who knew exactly the location of my university. I never wore any kind of school attire during my lives or publicized my location on Instagram, so it made me a little nervous. I stopped doing lives after that for a while, getting caught up in regular work and figured everything was fine. The guy sent me a few messages offering to take me on a date. A quick scan of his profile made it clear that he was at least 50 years old. He worked as a laborer for the city my university is located near. He asked me several times a day what buildings my classes were in, if I liked the cafeteria, etc., until I finally got scared and decided to block him. However, before I blocked him, I called him a pervert and a freaking weirdo for being so interested in me when I was so much younger than him, and for also trying to find me when I was trying to go to class. A few weeks later, after I'd forgotten about his weird messages, I got a message from him saying something along the lines of,
I waited for you in front of your old dorm for hours, but you never showed. Did you go home for the weekend? You shouldn't be so rude to me next time, or else we won't have fun whenever we meet face to face.
That message scared me more than I'd ever been scared in my life. One of my really close friends graduated from the university and began working as a campus police officer around the same time that this all happened. So I decided to go see her and see what I could do. Sadly, not much could really be done about it, but I definitely pulled back on my social media presence. The guy had followed me from 2 more Instagram accounts with different usernames, and I blocked all of them before he could even message me. Thankfully, since leaving after that spring semester, I haven't heard from him since. So to the creepy old guy from Instagram that wouldn't leave me alone, I really hope I don't hear from you ever again. When I was in the 8th to 10th grade, I was extremely involved in this small building server. The average age was probably about 15 to 17. And I joined a group of builders and Skyped with them every weekend for like hours. We all became close fast and we trusted each other, enough that we actually followed each other on Instagram. I became particularly close with one of the builders in my friend group named Peter. Peter was in the same grade as me and we ended up texting quite a lot. I had heard some rumors that Peter might have a crush on me, which he denied, which I kind of found laughable because, it was the internet, and I just brushed it off. Everything was fine for a while, until something began to feel really off whenever I talked to him. I was starting to constantly catch him telling these small lies. This really bothered me, so I figured it was time to distance myself from him and just stop talking to him altogether. Cut to a few months later of no contact, and Peter out of the blue sends me a text that he's going to be possibly transferring to my high school. He said he was doing this so he can get in-state tuition for college. Peter's plan was to somehow live completely alone and support himself while in high school. My stomach dropped when I read that text, and I just felt really off. I try to be calm, but also tell him that his plan is crazy. I tell him that it's oddly convenient that he chose my random suburb of all places. Peter just insists that his plan will work out and it's really just a coincidence that he's going to my high school. I'm trying to call Peter's bluff, hoping he's just screwing with me because I cut him off. Peter then says that he's already bought the plane tickets and he's going to stay in my town to go visit some high schools in the area. Fear washes over me. I begin to realize that Peter definitely has some really weird unhealthy attachment to me. Peter wasn't bluffing. To my horror, he posts a picture on Snapchat at the airport. Peter asked me to meet him up while he's there, but of course I decline. Later on, I see on his Snapchat story that he's actually taking a tour of my high school. He takes lots of videos and pictures and probably hoping I can see it. Luckily for me, I'm actually stuck home with pneumonia. I spend the next few days totally on edge and totally afraid that he was going to ring my doorbell at any moment. Luckily, he wasn't smart enough to find where I live, and he flies home and doesn't even follow his plan. The most baffling part? None of my old group on the Minecraft server even thought he was doing anything creepy. I honestly felt like I was going crazy for even thinking this was weird. I thought that my rejection for this meetup would be the end of it. But about 2 years later, I had just committed to my dream college. I still stupidly followed Peter on social media because I wanted some kind of warning if he was coming to my area again. Once again, Peter did. I see him posing right in front of the library at my college with the caption saying, "Transferring here is definitely the move." Cut to a few months later and Peter finds out that I had a boyfriend now and he directly contacts me for the first time in like 2 years. He starts asking me strange questions like, "Is he gonna protect you?" I shouldn't have answered, but for some reason I did. I finally blocked him and out of fear, I decided to stop following him on social media. He hasn't tried to contact me since. I'm a 20-year-old girl and at the time of this story I was 15 years old. I had started to really grow on social media as a Twitch streamer / general personality. I used to be really into posting fitness and other progress pictures, along with my other selfies. I had a lot of dedicated followers and a lot of people that I didn't really know on social media, but I didn't really mind since it was part of my job now. Fast forward about 2 years and me and my current boyfriend at the time had just broken up. We were still on pretty good terms though. He sends me a text seemingly worried about some guy on Instagram who's asking for my nudes like insistingly. My heart dropped. The random guy who I recognize as one of my usual followers had sent my ex an entire gallery of photos of me. Not just a few pictures, but hundreds. Pictures that I deleted years ago, workout progress pictures which I had stopped posting for quite a while now, as well as selfies, videos, weird angles, stories, literally everything. Hundreds of photos of my underage self on his camera roll. I was absolutely petrified. I had to come to terms with this and I eventually blocked him and just tried my best to move on from this. A few days later, after coming out to my followers about my stalker, some of my closest friends and admins on Discord had messaged me privately. Apparently someone was going into my Discord and posting some of the unflattering progress photos amongst many others with no context. It was humiliating, because like I said prior, I had to come to terms with the fact that I really wanted to be more modest and feel more comfortable with myself, and well, this was a really hard setback for me. It was really sickening, but that wasn't even the worst of it. A couple of months later, I decided to Google my username. That same guy had posted my images to various sexual websites, and among other things, even 4chan forums. The captions were things like, "Hot young Latina," and so on. I want you all to keep in mind that I was only about 15 to 16 in these photos. I was luckily able to have them removed, but it's still so terrifying to think how some people can grow so obsessed with you. Please be mindful of what you post on social media. The thing that scares me the most, though, is just how many of these people exist in secret that we don't even know about. That's a really scary thing to think about. This story took place a few years ago. Since so many people are using online dating, I thought that I would share this story. During one summer when I was in high school, I was swiping through Tinder looking for someone to hang out with. I matched with this guy who seemed pretty nice and he looked really good. Lots of shirtless photos, if you know what I mean. He was a counselor at a local high school in the metro area. We texted for a while and talked on the phone and then decided to grab brunch in the next weekend. I met him at the restaurant and we ended up having brunch with bottomless mimosas. He was nice and funny and he really made me laugh a lot. I think that we both got a little tipsy. He said that he was going to go to a barbecue at his friend's house after the brunch and he asked me if I wanted to go with him. He seemed pretty cool to me and I was having a really good time with him, so I agreed. I had to walk my dog because I hadn't anticipated being out that long, so I told him I would meet him back at the restaurant in about 30 minutes. He said that he really wanted to meet my dog, and he asked if he could come walk the dog with me. I thought about it for a second, but my place was a total disaster, so I just told him no. I came back to the restaurant and we grabbed an Uber to his friend's house. There were a bunch of people there drinking and talking, and everyone was really nice. The barbecue situation was going on out back. We talked to some people, hung out, and then drank. He started to get kind of drunk and really handsy, so I told him I wanted a drink and walked into the kitchen for some space. A couple of minutes later, he comes into the kitchen and tries to kiss me. I kind of just smiled and just shrugged my way out of his grasp and told him I needed to go to the bathroom. I asked if he would grab me a drink and meet me outside in the backyard. When I left the restroom, I walked straight out the front door 2 blocks down and took a right. I grabbed an Uber home immediately. I started getting calls and texts from him, but I blocked him. He also tried to reach out over on social media, but I just blocked him on there as well. At this point, I pretty much totally forgot about him. Fast forward about 3 years now. I'm sitting on the couch chilling and reading through the local news on my phone. I scroll down a bit and I then see a picture of this guy's face. He had apparently been arrested for attacking women that he met on Tinder. Yeah, I think it's safe to say that I definitely dodged a bullet.
So back when all this Islamic State stuff was kicking off in Iraq and Syria, I remember a mate of mine sharing an Instagram account with me that was run by this group called the Peshmerga. They were like this militia made up of Kurdish fighters, ethnically distinct from Arabs but still Muslims. In spite of this, they were being prosecuted by those ISIS guys for some reason, so they were basically at war with them. They used to post all these combat videos, as well as pictures of themselves with captured ISIS equipment, weapons, ammunitions, vehicles, all sorts of stuff. They posted some pretty gnarly stuff, so I followed the account and naturally their stuff would pop up in my timeline every so often when I was scrolling. So this one day, I see a picture of them with someone I figured was a captured ISIS guy. He was all bloody and looking pretty sorry for himself, but the caption of the photo was in Kurdish, so obviously I couldn't tell what it all said. Thank God for Google Translate, because although the translation wasn't perfect, they did actually have a Kurdish option, so I could get an idea of what it said. Some of the words must have either been spelled wrong or they were using Kurdish slang, because some of the words just wouldn't compute, but like I said, I did get an idea of what the captions to the photo said, and as much as those ISIS dudes were or are scumbags, what I read was highly disturbing. I can't remember what the post said verbatim, but the words that did get translated were stuff like vote, mercy, kill, and then like a number of hours. It didn't take a genius to work out what those Peshmerga guys were proposing. They wanted their Insta followers to decide if that captured prisoner was to live or die. And then, as you can imagine, pretty much all the replies were just one-word replies that could be translated into yes, kill, do it, and that sort of thing. Only a handful pleaded with them not to do it, giving reasons like, "You be no worse than they are. We're not barbarians," and other variations on that theme. I remember being really shocked because the time period they gave was only like 2 or 3 hours, and even though the post had only been up for like a half hour, there were literally hundreds of comments all telling them to kill the guy. I remember sharing the post with a mate of mine who'd shown me the account in the first place. We spent hours going back and forth on how messed up it was, whether or not the prisoner deserved to be killed given what his jihadist buddies were doing. I mean, they were taking slaves, bringing back legit open-air slave markets with weeping and wailing women and girls, not to mention killing literally hundreds of innocent people in these mass executions out in the deserts. But in the end, I suppose it didn't matter a jot what we thought about it because, as we're talking, my mate shares a post with one of the shocked, appalled emoji things. You know, the ones that are yellow but also kind of blue? It was a photograph. A photo of the same prisoner whose picture had been posted just a few hours previously. He was lying in the dusty dirt with this vacant look on his face, with a puddle of blood pooling under his body. They'd done it. They'd killed him. On the orders of the general Instagram-using public. It sent a chill through me. I mean, like I said, I've no doubt that the guy deserved what he got, but knowing it was done in such a savage way, put to a vote, then when passed, even the people who were supposedly the good guys could prove to just be as bloodthirsty and merciless as the monsters they were fighting. We can't really judge either. The Kurds were being exterminated out there. How would you react if your people were being murdered or sold into slavery? You'd want to fight back too, and ferociously at that. The posts were taken down and the account was banned not long after, thankfully. Obviously, Instagram couldn't have something like that on their platform, but as quickly as the admins would delete an account, a brand new one would pop up and post the same images and votes. It didn't just happen one time. I saw execution votes just like the first one I'd seen, posted time and time again. I don't think I've ever looked at people in quite the same way since. Like, I know all that stuff was half a world away, but I think we can all agree that at their core, people are the same all over. We can be kind, generous, compassionate, but we all have it in us to be cold, bloodthirsty, and monstrous too.
This started towards the end of my 8th grade year. Basically, my friend had this guy who was following her Instagram, and he would comment on all of her posts telling her how pretty she was. Now, that wasn't super weird, but we found it kind of creepy because this dude was obviously in his late 50s, and she was only 13. He also started messaging her every day. Not anything overly creepy, just mainly small talk at first. Eventually, he finds my page and starts commenting on it, but I don't post pictures of myself online much, and basically all of it was just doodles and pictures of my dog. Now, this guy's account also mainly consisted of art, and most of it was actually pretty good, so I didn't really mind him commenting on my art at first. Eventually though, he also started messaging me and trying to talk to me as well. Now, I have pretty bad anxiety and I hate coming across as mean, so I wouldn't really respond with words unless he asked me a direct question. Mainly what I did was just send a heart or a smiley face. Stupid, I know. So this continues for a few weeks and I learned that this guy can randomly blow up. I learned this because I had responded to a message from him asking my age and I told him I was 13, and then I put my phone down because I had to do the dishes. When I came back to my phone, I had like 10 messages from him asking why I wasn't responding and also telling me that he was joking. I was super confused at first at what he could have sent that would have made me mad. Basically, he had responded about how both me and my friend looked like we were 18. I found that to be creepy, but I didn't want to confront him about it, so I told him it was fine and that I was just doing my chores. The conversation moved on, and I made an excuse to stop messaging him for the day. One really creepy thing he did was when I posted a picture of my grandma's dog, which is a corgi, and put the caption of how much I love that dog. He liked that photo, and then within a day or so later, he sends me a picture of a corgi that he drew for me. I thanked him for it, and then he asked me for my address so he could send it to me. I absolutely refused, but he kept asking me, telling me that it was a gift and that he wanted me to have it. I had to send a message explaining that it was a family rule and that I wasn't allowed to tell him my address. After that, he dropped it. Eventually, after a bunch of little creepy things, my friend finally blocked him, and so he started ranting about it to me, saying how she shouldn't be creeped out by him and he was just trying to be nice, and that if she had a problem with anything he was saying, she should have just told him. He basically continued on like that for the next few days. He then pointed out how he was following her backup account, and how he was going to start talking to her on that one. I immediately told my friend all about this, and she blocked him on her backup as well. I eventually stopped talking to him as well, and I also blocked him.
Jocelyn Khanna was born on March 14, 1990 in Anaheim, California, before being raised near Lake Elsinore. Jocelyn first started modeling for local magazines at the age of just 17 years old, but gained the majority of her fame when she was featured on the cover of Lowrider magazine. Jocelyn also featured in World Star Hip Hop's Valentine's Day special video and Gerardo Ortiz's music video for his single Y Me Besa, as well as a number of other magazines and music videos. This fame led Jocelyn to launch her own swimwear brand, using her popularity on Instagram to sell her products to her whopping 13 million followers. Her Instagram is very similar to what you might expect from a so-called influencer, a collection of semi-naked pictures of herself, complete with several cataloging her extensive travels around the United States and Latin America, in a private jet no less, attending various modeling events in New York and Los Angeles. She was also famous for her rather rotund posterior, giving rise to her nickname of the Mexican Kim Kardashian. But Jocelyn apparently had the brains to complement her beauty, with her LinkedIn profile stating that she had studied microbiology at San Diego State University. She had smarts and good looks, with conservative estimates of her income suggesting she was making upwards of $100,000 from various sponsorships and swimwear sales. But for Jocelyn, it was simply not enough. So in December of 2020, Jocelyn booked herself an appointment with a plastic surgeon down in Colombia to undergo what has been referred to as a Brazilian butt lift. During so-called Brazilian butt lift procedures, fat is taken from various parts of the body and essentially molded into the buttocks to give them the appearance of being larger. The procedure has grown increasingly popular in the United States, fast becoming the most popular type of plastic surgery, according to 2015 statistics from the American Society of Plastic Surgeons. The rate of buttock lift procedures rose over 200% from 2000 to 2015, with the total number of surgeries rising from 1,356 to 4,767 procedures over the course of that time. Yet, injecting fat into the buttocks can lead to severe problems if done improperly, including fat embolism, a process in which fat enters the bloodstream and blocks a blood vessel. Jocelyn's butt lift was due to take place in early December, but around that same time, news of her tragic death seemed to emerge. The cause of death has not been confirmed by her family, but Instagram influencer Lyra Mercer was apparently privy to the reasons behind her demise, and tweeting out on December 7th, "OMG, Jocelyn Kano died in Colombia getting surgery. That's wild." A 3-hour live stream of what is to believe to be her funeral was shown on YouTube, which saw loved ones paying their respects to the young woman in a casket beside a large picture of her. Attendance was small and intimate, mainly due to the pandemic, but watching the live stream, we can see that Jocelyn's family was absolutely devastated by the news of her death, and that she is survived by 2 young children. The estimated death rate for Brazilian butt lifts is 1 in 3,000, according to plasticsurgery.com, and it seems likely that Jocelyn's death was a result of complications following the surgery, becoming one of the unlucky few unable to survive such a procedure. Others wonder why representatives for Kano's brand have not confirmed the news, with one follower complaining that, considering the brand is hers, at least it carries her name, y'all should make a statement. I mean, she had over 12 million followers after all. The lack of confirmation has only fueled the rumors that Jocelyn did indeed die as a result of the Brazilian butt lift procedure, and that those now in charge of her company feel that the way in which she died might damage her brand. After all, they too are profiting from the sense of vanity that has risen as a result of superficial Instagram influencer culture. Last year, an online news publication reported on a shocking rise in black market butt lifts, inspired in part by so-called Snapchat dysmorphia, the condition of being out of touch with one's own physique as a result of constant exposure to highly edited or modified bodies on social media. It's been widely reported that varieties of beauty-based social media have been extremely damaging to female mental health, putting unrealistic expectations on them to look or live in a particular way. But it seems that the same is true for their physical health too, with surgical shortcuts to certain body types having literally killed a handful of young women over the past few years. I think we can all agree that it is frankly terrifying that such pressures can be felt so deeply by women that they would choose to risk their lives to attain a certain societal standard of beauty. And that smart, successful people can be so heavily affected by what they see online that they opt for what are obviously dangerous surgical procedures. Jocelyn Cano didn't have to die, that much is clear. But the question is how many other young women will have to lose their lives before we learn to love what we're born with naturally, instead of pining after some unattainable standard, and how much blood is on our hands for allowing such a standard to exist in the first place.
So, a long time ago, I had a falling out with one of my friends who liked to cyber harass people she didn't like. Because I knew this, I took precautions on all of my social medias and added the two-step verification where it would send codes to your cell phone if someone tried to log in or change your password. Seems like a safe step, right? I never really thought about it any further until a few days ago. I get an SMS text from a random number that addressed me by my full first name. It freaked me out a little because the spelling of my first name is pretty uncommon from where I'm from. No big deal. Maybe it's just an old friend who changed phones. I gave the classic, "Who dis?" back at them, to which I received an even stranger text back. "Oh my goodness, it's you. Are you 18? I have something I want to cash app you." Well, that's weird, I thought to myself. Probably just some scam to hack my cash app. I said again, "Who is this?" I never received a text back from that number. No less than 5 minutes later, I get 3 calls and 2 spam voicemails from different and unrecognized phone numbers. Then I get a text telling me to pick up the phone and saying my name. Now, that's pretty alarming. I immediately took screenshots and I had my boyfriend call from his phone, but no luck. I blocked the number and I hoped that was it. Maybe about 30 minutes later, I get 5 phone calls from a new number and a new, even more alarming set of texts.
"I'm a 40-year-old man and I'm in love with you. I will keep trying to reach you until you respond. I won't stop."
I immediately blocked the number and then called my parents. Then within about 2 minutes, he made a new number and texted me again.
"Wow, I just want to talk to you for 5 minutes. I'll even pay you, but after that, consider me gone."
Again, I just blocked him. I alerted my boss, then the text stopped. After work, I filed a police report and bought a baseball bat. My first instinct was that it was a guy I recently worked with who had been recently fired for harassment. One of my friends/coworkers who is good with the tech staff changed his phone number and texted the number pretending to be me or Burner to get some more information out of him. It was a bit of a long conversation, so I'll sum it up by saying that this guy basically wanted to talk to me on the phone while he masturbated. He called me 26 times and got no answer, so he eventually stopped trying. We assumed that was the end of it. The next morning, I get a text from a new number yet again. He was claiming to be one of my friend's fathers. I started to freak out. Both my parents and my boyfriend were at work, so he sent his mom over to calm me down and stay with me while I was alone in my apartment. He called my phone and she answered it, and all he said in this super creepy raspy voice is, "Please," and then abruptly hung up. I was having a full-blown panic attack at this point. We called the police department and they had an officer come out to update my report. She was still texting the guy while the cop was there. Once she told him law enforcement had been contacted, his whole story completely changed. He said that he doesn't know me or anything about me. He doesn't even live near me and means no physical harm. He's just a lonely guy who got my phone number from Facebook and decided to harass me. I might remember this wrong, but I could have sworn I had my phone number set to private, but I know I still had it up there because of the two-step verification. I recently posted something on Facebook Market, so I'm assuming that's where he found me. I have since deleted that account and changed my phone number, and nothing else has happened. Posting this here is more or less a warning to anyone who has that two-step verification set up. Please double check and make sure that you have the most private settings as possible for everything. I'm not even going to set up all that stuff with my new phone number. I'm not going to risk giving it out anywhere online.
This story happened when I moved back to Tokyo from the US in 2016. I'm originally from Japan, but my parents and I moved to the United States when I was just 6 years old. On the first day in a new high school, I was really shy and I was rather new to the community. I considered myself a rather shy person. I was a kid in a new area. It was the first day of school, and I sat down on an appropriate-looking school bench and looked around me. I instantly noticed a girl waving and walking towards me. Her name was Ami, and we would soon become great friends in the future. She later introduced me to her friend group, and I liked them instantly. They were very positive and extremely nice to me. Their names were Suki and Rumigo. Before I knew it, I had already found myself a new home. It felt like I was living there my whole life. One sunny day, we were having a picnic during our lunch break. Eventually, the conversation shifted towards urban legends. Suki started telling us about these, and she said they were allegedly real. She told us a scary story about a girl who appeared to be cut in half. Many people reported seeing her at night. Essentially, people claimed they saw a ghost girl with her guts hanging visibly out of her body. While this obviously terrified me, I was always the skeptical kind towards folklore and legends. I personally believed that they were just made for children to behave or something to scare people with. Suki eventually asked her grandfather about the story, and he explained it to her. Apparently, this thing was called the teke teke. Legend had it that a girl was murdered by her classmates on a railroad. Her body was cut in half when they left her on the rails, and a train ran her over. And now, the ghost haunts people who walk by railroads at night. Suki eventually told us this, and there was a short silence. We all looked at each other and laughed out loud, except for Suki. She was dead serious. I told her that she'd been watching too many horror movies, and that things like this just don't exist in real life. We giggled a bit more, but Suki's face remained stone cold. She really believed it. I commended Suki's efforts to scare us, but let her know promptly that she failed. She rolled her eyes, and she seemed visibly upset. I knew she was a big fan of this stuff, but I never thought she'd believe it. She then told us, "Okay, if you girls are so sure that it's fake, why don't we go test it ourselves? We don't have anything to lose, right?" My laughter stopped immediately. While I didn't believe in the legends, I was still hesitant to go out in the middle of the night to some abandoned area. I was willing to prove that ghosts didn't exist, but not that badly. I had no problem proving Suki wrong. But crazy people and animals in the middle of the night were an actual threat. So, are we going to some abandoned canal or sketchy location to prove this? I asked Suki. No, the trial will take place in our school, Suki said. I let out a sigh of relief. I mean, it was our school. We've all been there before, and there's plenty of people at all hours. So, what will we do? I asked Suki. Suki told us that we would be trying to summon a girl named Hanako-san. The urban legend regarded a girl who committed suicide on the third stall of the third floor of her school. We would have to enter that stall of our school, say her name, and punch 3 times on the stall doors. Then, she might appear. We decided to meet after our extracurricular activities in a third-floor toilet at around 7 p.m. For context, I joined a few classes where I volunteered to help my art teachers at school. It was a great way to spend my free evenings. Making origami and hanging out with people my age beat being bored at home any day. The extracurricular itself ended at around 7 p.m., so it was a perfect time to meet with the girls in the bathroom. There really weren't going to be any kids to bother us, and the school was technically open at this time. And so we proceeded with our plan. Roughly after 7 p.m., we met in the toilet. Suki had already prepared a few candles and warned us not to turn on any lights. She had her hood up. It was already giving me the creeps. We stood in a circle and looked at each other with straight faces. It was starting to look like some sort of cult. At this point, I was already getting creeped out. She rose her finger to her mouth and let us know that we were supposed to be silent during this whole time. She then took a red pencil out of her bag and drew something on the third stall. She told us quietly to hold each other's hands, and we did. We held each other's hands tightly, and Suki started mumbling something under her breath. She then said loudly 3 times, "Hanako-san, can you hear me?" I closed my eyes out of fear. At this point, I even started to doubt myself and believe that something might actually appear. My heart was racing and my palms were sweaty. My legs started to give out. I slowly opened my eyes. Nothing was there. Suki tried a few more times, but after a few more minutes she gave up and we left the stall. I was beyond relieved. Nothing happened. I looked at the other girls and they seemed a bit spooked but relieved as well. Suki finally gave in and said maybe we were right. She put out the candles and we packed our stuff and left. It was already dark outside and I knew my mom would be mad. I forgot to text her earlier that I would be later than usual. When we left school, I tried to reach inside my backpack and find my phone to text my mom. I shuffled around, but it wasn't there. Damn it, I must have left it on the windowsill of the bathroom. I looked up at that bathroom window, and the thought of going back in there sent chills up my spine. I eventually excused my friends and ran into the building. There was no one there except for me and the janitor working the late shift. I went up the stairs and slowly went by the bathroom doors. There was a dead silence by the opening. No lights were on. I was afraid to go in there. I heard a rumbling noise from the inside. No way I'm going in there, I told myself. But I stopped for a second and thought about it. I'm not gonna leave my phone in there. If I allow that to happen, someone's just gonna take it the next day. And what, I'm gonna allow that to happen because of something fake? And what would I tell to my mom after losing a $1,000 phone? No way. I'm going in. I walked in and saw my phone straight away at the end of the bathroom. I tried turning on a light, but it wasn't working. That's weird. I had no time to waste, so I ran quickly to get my phone. I was happy to have it. But before I turned around and waved to my friends outside, I heard a thudding sound behind me. This time, twice as loud. It was coming from the third stall. I was paralyzed by fear. I looked up and down the stall and spotted a brown robe swinging over it. There was blood coming out from the bottom of it. I didn't want to see anything more. I ran out of the toilet as fast as I could, never even thinking about looking back. I told no one about it and tried to block it from my mind. If it really happened, this would destroy my mental health and the perception of my world. It couldn't be true. I couldn't have seen a real ghost. It can't be. As I came back home, I tried to go to sleep, but I couldn't close my eyes. I was so afraid she would come to me. I was up all night on guard, looking around my room. I even had a nightstand lamp turned on because I couldn't see the whole room clearly. I felt like a wreck the next day. My mom tried to ask me what's wrong. I looked so tired and paranoid, but I didn't speak a word to her during breakfast. I was paranoid and terrified of the thought of going to my first class. It was on the 3rd floor. But what I saw as I walked up the stairs was somehow even more petrifying. The toilet doors were blocked by a few police officers, and around them was yellow police tape. One of my friends approached me and told me about a horrific incident. Apparently, a lower grade girl committed suicide yesterday right after we left the bathroom. She waited for us to leave and then attempted to cut her wrist. That didn't work, so she hung herself. It then clicked, and I realized what I saw last night. It wasn't a ghost, it was a person. I was an eyewitness to that girl taking her own life, and I did nothing. I couldn't believe I just ran away in anticipation of it being a ghost. I burst into tears, still telling no one that I was there. Afraid of the consequences, I just told my friends that she must have came in there after I retrieved my phone. It may not be a ghost, but the guilt of what happened that night will haunt me for the rest of my life. I always considered myself to be a low-risk type of person. I never really had gotten into any super dangerous or life-threatening situation. But that changed 4 summers ago. You'll believe me by the end of the story when I tell you that this experience changed my life forever. We were just let out on break by our school, and my friends were eager to go and do something stupid as usual. I was the responsible one of the group, if you will. It was honestly quite surprising that I even hung out with these adrenaline junkies. I was never a risk taker. I would always consider the consequences to my action before I took them. Many times, I was the balancing factor to my friends' crazy antics. Despite this, I loved hanging out with them. The dynamic of them encouraging me to try new things and push me out of my comfort zone was something I never really could find in other people. But when I turned 18, peer pressure started skyrocketing. I felt like I was somehow missing out on something, that I was living my early years of life in fear. This, combined with the people I was hanging out with, brought me to make some really irrational decisions. Whether that be shoplifting or driving with them at incredibly high speeds, I caught myself constantly trying out new, irresponsible decisions. This tolerance towards doing stupid things is what I largely blame for what happened to me. Summertime hit and the temperature was starting to skyrocket. While most teenagers went to a friend or neighbor's pool to swim, we wanted to try something a little different. There was a nearby water reserve which was strictly prohibited to swim in. During the daytime, security patrolled the area and made sure no one jumped in that water. But at nighttime, it was open to anyone brave enough to swim among the various dangerous fish over there. My friends wanted to go there and take a dip with me, cool off during the hot Korean night. Rumor had it that the lake was haunted and that a lot of sketchy things have happened there. This, of course, only strengthened our urge to go there and take a swim late at night. Of course, I was hesitant at first, but as peer pressure crept in, I went along with it. We arrived at the lake around midnight. We were already in our swimsuits. There were some lights around the complex, but the lake was pitch dark. It was impossible to see where you were even swimming or standing or how deep the water was. Any of the said large marine life in the lake were going to be impossible to spot. This really frightened me. Sure, I was opening up to taking new risks, but this was really pushing that as well. After a lot of convincing from my friends, we all headed to the lake. One of my friends guided us through the shrubs. We used a large pocket knife to cut down the leaves and somehow make our way through the fence. When we got to the lake, I reluctantly got in. It really wasn't that bad at first. The water was quite nice and it was a lot of fun swimming in the dark with my friends. We kept swimming around for about 15 minutes while cracking jokes and making fun of each other. But as we were swimming, I noticed something, specifically someone out in the distance. I saw a mystic white figure out in the distance. It quickly faded away in the water. I shrugged it off as maybe just some light reflecting and kept swimming. Eventually, my friends wanted to do a dare and see who would go out farthest in the lake at night. Not being in my best decision-making mindset, I agreed, but I made sure to stay relatively close to the shore and grab onto a small concrete wall. Something deep inside me still felt off about the whole idea, but I went through with it. We all swam as far as we could. Several of my friends stopped halfway. The water was several meters deep at this point. At that point, it was just me and two of my other friends in the lake. We started swimming back, but as I was heading back, I noticed something under the water. It seemed to be a person under there. I looked closer at what it could possibly be and felt a tugging on my foot. I tried to look around and see what was happening, but the tugging just got harder and harder. I tried to wriggle out and see what could be doing this. Was I stuck on something? Why was it pulling me downwards? At this point, I was screaming and panicking. My friends noticed and started quickly swimming towards me. I tried grabbing at my feet, but something pushed my hands away. At this point, my head was completely under the water. I was losing oxygen, and I was losing it fast. My life was flashing before me, confusion and fear running through my mind, adrenaline pumping through my veins. I tried to make sense of the situation, but I couldn't. There was no way this was some large fish or lake shark. It felt like a human arm was pulling at my ankle downwards. My friends were trying to pull me up towards the surface, but it was no use. I even felt some of my friends trying to kick down or thrash at whatever was pulling me down, but even that didn't work. Eventually, I felt a sharp pain at my foot and started to black out. Still confused as to who or what was trying to drown me. I woke up at the hospital a day later, completely unaware of my surroundings. Part of me wanted to believe that this was some sort of bad dream. As I started to panic and try and leave the bed, a nurse and doctor walked in along with some of my friends and they calmed me down. They explained to me everything that happened. I asked them what was pulling me down in the lake and they didn't have a clear answer. The doctors and nurses said it was most likely some sort of lake shark or predatory fish. Apparently they can get very large and extremely heavy and are certainly powerful enough to yank down a person of my size. But that's when I asked them, how exactly did they get me out of the water? The nurse looked down at my foot and that's when I noticed it. Most of my foot was removed. All of my toes were gone and the side of my foot was mutilated. I turned pale. I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to see it. The nurse explained to me that my friends had to use the large pocket knife they had on hand and cut a large part of my foot off in order to save me. She said I would most likely have died if they didn't do so, as those fish don't tend to let go of their jaws. I was devastated and in complete disbelief. A few days later, my friends checked in on me to see how I was doing. We eventually discussed what happened. My friend explained to me that when they rushed towards me, they saw what seemed to be a human hand pulling me down in the water. They tried pulling me, but the arm was just too powerful. They even tried hitting at it or cutting it, but it didn't seem to work. As a last resort, they had to amputate part of my foot. They explained to me the legend of the Mulgwishin. As per Korean legend, vengeful spirits that were taken from this world too early often sought violent actions against unsuspecting victims. The lake we were swimming at was apparently a common spot for the mafia to execute people and dump their bodies too. They often lurk where their bodies are left and try and subject people to the same form of death. In the case of a water ghost, they drag you down and never let go. This explained everything. The person I saw in the distance, the ghostly silhouette in the water, the feeling of the human hand on my ankle. My friends tried to explain to the police and doctors that this was some sort of paranormal activity and that it didn't look like a fish at all. But the emergency services obviously did not believe us. As indicated by the signs around the lake, this area was known for large and aggressive marine life, and to them that was the most reasonable explanation. After all, why would they believe a group of trespassing teenagers? Currently, I walk with a prosthetic. I still get nightmares about what happened that night. My foot is a painful reminder every day of what happened to me and how I could have avoided it. We should never have gone in there in the first place. To this day, I still do believe that I was attacked by some sort of paranormal being, and that night will haunt me till the day I die. I'm an American citizen, but my family is from the South Asian country of Bengal. I loved spending time with my friends in the States, but I really enjoyed visiting my extended family back east. I worked at a business firm, and I handled a lot of information sciences there. It was a well-paying but tedious job. I rarely took breaks, but my manager was kind enough to let me get a couple weeks off of work every year. Those precious free weeks I had were taken up by a variety of activities. It was between going on vacation, chilling at home, or visiting my family back in Bangladesh. This year, the executives decided to give my branch a 1-week break over spring. But this break was going to be special. It had been more than 2 years since I'd last seen my greater family, and I really missed them. I instantly booked a ticket to Dhaka International Airport, packed my bags, and was en route the next day. When I arrived to the capital city, I swung by some old friends and we hung out a little. My old friends lived in the heart of the capital, but my family, on the other hand, well, they were in a not-so-urban area. While my parents moved to the large city when I was rather young, my grandparents, uncles, and aunts stayed in a small town northwest of the capital. The town was rural, but it was beautiful. It had a population of about 15,000 at the time, and it was a sparsely populated area. The town comprised of a set of homes, a school, a few shops, and mostly forest between them. It was a very remote region, and it didn't have all the facilities someone from a developed nation would consider normal. The electricity was unreliable, the tap water wasn't clean, and the internet cut out most often. But in my eyes, the lack of comfort was worth it. People were very nice and the community was tightly knit. I could consider almost anyone there family. So I hopped on a bus and headed over there. It was a long and bumpy ride, but I got there in one piece. After years, I was finally reunited with my family. The village was just as beautiful as it was. At the door, I was greeted by my sister, my cousin Babel, my family dog, my mother, and my Aunt Tara. She happened to be visiting from a neighboring village. Now don't get me wrong, I love my family and it's always a blast seeing them. But my Aunt Tara was a bit odd, we'll say. Aunt Tara was a strong believer in superstitions and spiritual things. The things she'd say or try to make us do were extremely bizarre sometimes. She was seemingly a nice person, but was difficult to spend time with. She had a few quirks, if I can put it shortly. She would always tell us these terrifying ghost stories when we were kids, but most of the time, they weren't even for fun. She was serious. After catching up with my family, we quickly stepped inside and I unpacked my bags. But as I was unpacking, I felt a pair of eyes on me. It was my aunt. Sure, she was an oddball, but this was weird even for her. "Are you okay, Auntie?" I asked. She kept staring for a bit longer, but snapped out of it. "I'm fine," she said. "But the presence around us isn't," she continued. I was taken aback. I honestly thought she was done with this spiritual nonsense. I sense a disturbance in the spirits among us. There are malicious souls and I sense them nearby, she continued. Okay, Auntie, I'll bear that in mind, I replied, trying to make the conversation a bit less awkward. Be careful, and don't go out at night. Find a nearby shrine if you feel watched. She abruptly walked away. At this point, I was more annoyed than scared. I was honestly reluctant to even stay the night if she continued these antics. My thought was interrupted by my mom calling us out for dinner. Her food was delicious, so naturally I rushed over to the dining room. But as we were eating, my aunt was still acting strange. She had a sort of pendant necklace with a holy symbol on it. Every time we tried to include her in the conversation or asked her anything, she'd passively change the topic. She seemed very suspicious of something. We eventually just ignored her behavior and continued with our nights. But as I was about to sleep, my aunt knocked on my door. She told me once again to not step out at night and that she was very worried for our safety. I couldn't believe it. She's still droning on about these spirits. I just shut the door and ignored her. I tried my best to go to sleep, but my jet lag was keeping me up. Bangladesh was about 13 hours ahead of the US West Coast, and my body clock was completely flipped. I tried watching some videos on my phone in hopes of passing time, but the internet eventually cut out, and it was just me alone in a dark room. I thought about going out on a night walk, but then remembered what my aunt said. I didn't believe in that stuff, but part of me was telling me that it may actually be a bad idea going out at this hour. But my boredom was getting to me, and I said hell with it. My dog awoke to the sound of me stepping outside and started acting up. At first I thought he was just cranky and tired, but he seemed to growl at me as I got closer to the door. That was odd. I ventured out anyways. As I stepped out, I felt the crisp air hit my skin. The village didn't have many streetlights and it was all engulfed in forest. There was a trail over to the side of the street my house was on and I proceeded through there. At first, nothing unusual seemed to be occurring. The sound of the crickets roared as I walked through the wilderness on a dirt path. But as I was walking, I felt watched. I tried to shrug it off as my aunt getting to me, but I almost felt a chill going up my spine. I kept hearing a loud voice coming from a distance behind me. It seemed to be an owl. But as the hooting of the owl got closer and closer, there seemed to be something seriously wrong with it. The owl hoots were almost human. The sounds the owl made kept switching back and forth from an actual owl to what seemed to be a person impersonating one. The hooting got louder and louder, but I never noticed an owl in sight. I surveyed my surroundings and saw a misty black figure in the shadows. It quickly vanished behind a tree. I kept scanning up and down the trees to find out what was around me, and I noticed a silhouette of an owl in a tree, but as I blinked, it disappeared again. What was happening? Was it my eyes still adjusting to the dark? Maybe my jet lag was getting to me. The hooting suddenly stopped, and the forest was dead silent. My breath sounded like a roar. I slowly looked over my shoulder only to see it. In the darkness, I made out an owl sitting in a tree. The owl somehow morphed itself into a shadowy humanoid ghost form. I couldn't believe my eyes. I didn't want to believe my eyes. The misty creature slowly morphed around and started shifting from tree to tree, getting closer to me. At this point, I sprinted. I sprinted as hard as I could, adrenaline rushing through every ounce of my body. I heard the hooting start again behind me, this time like it was angry. I kept sprinting out of the woods. I ran. I looked towards my parents' house. I couldn't think of anywhere else I could hide. When I got to my house, before I could even say anything, my aunt was waiting by the front door. She dragged me in. The creature was still following me. I could hear voices at the edge of the forest where my house was. My aunt quickly took me over to our house's shrine and kept me there between a few idols. I waited and waited, confused and terrified. Eventually, the sun rose. I somehow mustered the strength to step out of the prayer room. My aunt was waiting outside the door. I explained to her everything that happened. The owl, the noises, the weird misty figure, and how it somehow chased me home. She explained to me that I was very lucky to be alive, and that I'd encountered something called a penchapechi. Penchapechis are a form of unsatisfied or malicious spirits that haunt the forests of Bengal. They take the form of owls and follow travelers in the woods until they're alone and cornered. The ghost would then consume its prey like a zombie and continue to its next victim. She said that she felt the presence of many angry or ill-intended spirits in the area. She felt a rise in these ghosts were most likely due to the flood in a neighboring region that killed many people. The spirits of those people did not feel satisfied with their lives. Most of them died far too young and continued to live in the afterlife as ghosts. That story occurred about a year back, and I haven't gone back since. But if I do, I will definitely listen to my aunt.